All right. Well, hello everyone. Let's see here. I'm actually going to need to open a second window so I can see what's going on there on YouTube. So give me just a moment while I do that. And we're just going to wait a couple minutes to get a few more viewers going here. So I need to open the, there we go. There's that. Get a few more viewers. All right. So it looks like we got 4 folks watching right now. And let me pull this over here. All right. So first of all, hello, everyone. Please feel free to comment on the side and say hello. Also, if you want to give a super chat, those questions will be answered first and are guaranteed to be answered. All right, so let me just put that up. Boom, there it is. All right, everyone. So it looks like we got a few people. Hi, Susie. Nice to see you. Susie is one of my longest subscribers. She was a subscriber before my infamous Sam Tripoli tinfoil hat appearance, which, by the way, I'm going to be on tinfoil hat again here in June. It's possible that it'll be early July that it comes out, but we're filming in mid-June. And I'm also going to try and get Sam Tripoli on my channel because I'd like to interview him about being sort of a comedian in the truth movement and how important it is to have comedy in these trying times, which I think it's actually incredibly important. So as you can see, I'm not in my usual room, and so I just blurred out the background. Just have to shoot in here today. And so I'm just going to wait here a couple more minutes. If you want to throw your name up on the side, I'll give you a shout out. And real quick, I want to give a shout out to my Patreons or patrons. So let's see here. I got to log in here. Should make sure I don't forget anyone because it's been really nice. I've had a bunch of folks join the Patreon. And so Patreon is one of the best ways to support this channel, although you can also just hit join on the button below, or there should be a join button if you don't have it on full screen. So I'm just going to real quick rattle off my patrons here, and I also need to get this bad boy open. I apologize, folks. I am not able to do things in my normal room and my normal setup, so I'm a little bit out of sorts here today. So let's see here. I need to go to manage videos. I apologize, everyone. Give me just a minute. This also gives people a couple more minutes here to join up. Okay, so I'm going to do a shout out, and I'm going to start this time with my my patrons on YouTube, and then I'll go to my Patreon patrons. So fashion only, not fashion now. So my apologies, fashion only. I said your name wrong in the Cynthia Dreyer / Cynthia Schneider conversation I did recently. But thank you, fashion only, my first YouTube patron. So thank you for getting the ball rolling in that. Susie, as I just mentioned, who's one of my longest subscribers, is also does the paid patronage through YouTube. And then David M. Taylor is also one of my patrons here on YouTube. And I am actually encouraging people for right now to go into, if you want to become a patron of the channel, to do so through YouTube, just because I have to reach a certain threshold to get a payout, and I'm below that right now. You have to cobble together $100, which I haven't done yet. And so Jason Ellis, Ivan Coronel, Shea Peoples, or Shay Peoples, perhaps. My apologies. I think it's probably Shay. Sarah Somerville, Molite, Dan Whippy, who I hope Dan is on. He's down there in Australia, by crikey. And he hopefully was able to get up this morning to see it. And then finally, my very first patron ever, Ryan Chandler. So those are my patrons, and thank you to all of you. That is hugely helpful. And when I am able to earn income on this channel, then it helps me to have more time to work on this channel, because I do have a family that I'm supporting. And so I have to find time to do this in addition to my paid work and my duties as a parent and all the rest of the stuff I have going on. And so it looks like we got 8 people. So I'm just going to real quick say hi to folks who are here. So we have Susie Gemini, which I mentioned. We have Ridazi. We have Truther, and who's saying it's a late night there in Thailand. Well, awesome. Thanks for tuning in Thailand. So cool. I hope to visit Southeast Asia at some point. There's lots I want to see there, so I'm a little jealous, Truther. Mr. Fox is in the house, and he has some interesting questions. So does Ridazi. So go ahead and throw your question over to the side. Just put a comment up, and we can, and I'll give you a shout out. But I think we're probably ready to just go ahead and start rolling. And so I'm not going to talk super long in the first half before I start getting to the Q&A section. But I just wanted to wrap up. So my last few live chats have been around the eclipse cycle. And, some people might be like, oh, boo, there was no big events that happened during the eclipse cycle. Where's the sexy event that was going to happen? Ian, you said that something big would happen. Well, actually, a lot happened over the eclipse cycle, and some of it is beyond massive, and we're definitely going to see the results of that here in the not too distant future. And so just a few of the things that happened, I'm just going to go to my notes here and pull this off to the side, and then back to, darn it, so many tabs open. All right, back to the StreamYard. Okay, so just some things that happened during that eclipse cycle, which are just kind of crazy. I'll get to the biggest one last, but just some big things. I mean, we now have, and I'm going to real quick do a share. Let's see here. Actually, I need to, how do I do that? Let's see. StreamYard Mozilla. Okay, we'll do that. And then we'll allow that. Okay, so that probably is just an infinitely repeating screen there, which is hilarious, but that's not actually what I want to show you. What I want to show you is, oh my gosh, did I close it? Did I close that? Oh my goodness gracious. So what I wanted to show you, but it looks like I closed it. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn that off. Embarrassing. And I'm still getting used to the StreamYard here, so my apologies. And that's probably an infinite cascade of things right there. So we will stop the share if I can figure out how. There we go. So anyways, I'll just tell you, you can look it up yourself. I guarantee it's real. More banks in terms of overall value have collapsed than happened in all of the epic crash of 2008. And let me tell you something, it's not done. And that's also not including Credit Suisse or HSBC. I forget which one. I think Credit Suisse failed, and then HSBC bought Credit Suisse. And so, that is a massive bank. That's like the second biggest bank in Switzerland. That's a massive bank. That's not included in this. I'm talking about just in America, Silicon Valley Bank. JP Morgan just bought out that. I forget what it was, like Pacific Bank or something like that. I forget. But just the total of the 3 major banks that failed so far is actually more in terms of market capitalization than all the banks that failed in 2008. And what's more is it seems that, this to me is a planned demolition of the financial system in order to attempt to usher in the new financial system with, of course, the Molochians are trying to put the CDBCs into effect. And the Luciferians are trying to switch over into what's sometimes called the quantum financial system, which would include, which is going to include, it seems, XRP, Ripple, and Stellar Lumens, and a few other specific tokens that will allow people to do either on-demand liquidity or direct peer-to-peer payments that will allow people to actually circumvent the CDBC system eventually. That's something I did, and I think Shadow Wars 4 The Fuse is Lit, I think was the one I did. It might have been Shadow Wars 2 or 3. But anyways, I discuss how, there's that as above, so below phenomenon. And it appears that the central banks, when they flip the switch to allow Ripple, the Ripple net and the interledger protocol to take over to where the banks can do cross-border payments with each other and replace the SWIFT system, that is going to lead to, I think very quickly, savvy businessmen are going to recognize that they can do direct payments via the Ripple net in the interledger protocol and without going through CDBCs. And that will be less friction. That'll be less of a fetter, according to, Adam Smith capitalism. And therefore, the first bank to do that, or the first businesses to do that, are going to have a first mover advantage, and they're going to get compounding gains as they're not switching between the CDBCs and whatever kind of losses, but dealing directly with one another in XRP or other crypto settlements. So the banking crisis hasn't even begun to end yet, and it's now moved into the regional banks and the local banks, which are starting to collapse, and many of them are in trouble. And unfortunately, people are getting spooked, and they're moving from the smaller regional banks into the banking giants like JP Morgan and so forth. And so it's allowing consolidation. And in fact, when that big bank failed recently and was going to go into FDIC receivership, they allowed JP Morgan to buy it on a sweetheart deal. And they actually broke an FDIC rule. I think it's FDIC rule. It's one of the trillions of government agencies, right? One of the financial watchdogs. Red keeps down the competition of the big players, right? One of the financial regulators allowed JP Morgan to buy that bank, even though that would mean that JP Morgan now has over 10% of all deposits in the United States, which is an insane and dangerous amount of concentration. And it's just beginning, because it's pretty clear to me that what they're trying to do is collapse all the regional banks, force people into the major, too big to fail, systemically important favored banks, which then would allow them to shove through the CDBCs, right? And again, I believe that CDBCs will roll out and then will very quickly fail, because I believe there's going to be uprisings around the world in various countries, especially where they use too heavy of a hand. I also believe that businesses are going to learn that they can just transact directly with one another via RippleNet, and therefore they will not want to move in and out of CDBCs and then lose that money on the exchange and all that sort of stuff. And they're going to just start hoarding XRP to deal with one another directly. So the bank failures have eclipsed the 2008 crisis total. So then, of course, we also had Elon Musk. Elon, if you're watching this, if you're one of my 13 viewers right now, seems slightly doubtful. Bro, I would have warned you, do not do a launch of a rocket on an eclipse day. Like, what are you thinking, man? Talk about tempting fate. And so, of course, the SpaceX rocket blew up. And that I can actually show a picture of if I'm smarter than the... If I'm smarter than the StreamYard program here, which is very much up for debate right now. Let's see here. Let's share screen. Select window or screen. Oh my gosh, it's so ridiculous. There it is. So there's the big Falcon heavy rocket that failed and blew up there on just after launch, because Musk didn't hire me as his personal astrologer at a few million a year, and therefore he didn't know that that's a terrible time to do an eclipse. However, I had a bit of a mishap the day after the eclipse, trying to fix my iPhone, and ended up just bricking it. So clearly I am not immune to making mistakes around astrology myself. It's also Mercury retrograde. Maybe not the best time to launch a rocket or try and replace an iPhone battery, as it turns out. So, we had, that big explosion, which may have been, it may have been rigged. It may have been someone was sending Musk a message, and it may have just been a mishap, because, again, it was on the final day of the lunar eclipse, actually, when it blew up. And again, feel free to just keep putting up comments, and I will, answer them when we get to the second half. It's not even really second half. I'll probably be spending a little bit more time in Q&A. So then, of course, Tucker Carlson was booted. I guess the decision, it seems, was made during the Eclipse cycle, but for sure he I think that he finally was told by Fox after the Eclipse cycle, but it might have still been during the mouth of the Eclipse. But it seems the decision was made, and it was probably Musk bringing on RFK, and they talked about the you-know-whats, right? And it happened real quick. And by the way, BlackRock owns both Vanguard, the voting company, or Dominion, maybe it is. Dominion, the voting company, and they also own Fox. And so BlackRock, as Dominion, sued itself as Fox, and then they didn't really go to discovery or a proper trial. And Fox said, "Oh, you're right. There's no where's my hand? Why is my hand not appearing? There it is. Sorry, because I'm only seeing half my screen here. There's no what do you call it? Concerns about these black box voting machines that you can't look at. See, when Fox brought it up, they were lying, and they admitted in court that they lied, that there's no proof that these voting machines are anything other than on the up and up and perfect. And BlackRock also owns Moderna and Pfizer, right? Like controlling interest or whatever. And they probably didn't like that Bobby Kennedy Jr. was on Tucker Carlson's show. And Kennedy is a lot more complicated figure than a lot of people think. A lot of people just see him pure as the driven snow. I'm of the opinion that he is actually probably, hopefully, a Luciferian. Because actually he massively supported Hillary Clinton constantly. He seemed to support the lockdowns, interestingly enough, when they happened, or he didn't really complain about them at the time. But yes, he's been one of the vocal advocates against the you-know-what, and also classical pre-March 2020 events you-know-whats, right? So, which I agree with them. That's one of the things. A lot of people are like, "Oh, that's nonsense that the regular ones could ever hurt children or, cause autism or anything like that." And they're like, there would have to be a vast conspiracy to have hidden and suppressed any studies that prove that, for example, aluminum causes inflammation in the brain. This exact study came out, by the way. And therefore that maybe that is the cause of some of the autism and OCD and depression and some of the other things that we're seeing in, Gen Z and millennials. Have you noticed that millennials and Gen Z are a little more unhinged than previous generations? Yeah, it's damage from the you-know-whats. It's damage from the metals and the inflammation in the brain, and having a schedule that's like, they have 5 times as many as I did, or at least 3 times as many as I did. And the Gen Z definitely has 5 to 10 times as many as I had. And those are filled with what? Those are filled with various kind of what they call adjuvants, like mercury and aluminum. They're also filled with fetal tissue. And I wonder if fetal tissue from the opposite sex given to a baby has a transgenic effect that would cause perhaps things like gender confusion. It could just be the atrazine in the water supply, which, that's the famous Alex Jones, they're turning the frogs gay kind of thing, right? It turns out that is an actual credible thing. That chemical atrazine causes spontaneous sex change and also homosexuality, it seems, in amphibians. Like, it's not up for debate. So there's a chemical war that's been going on for a long, long time. It didn't start in 2020. You might have, you maybe became aware of it in 2020 and the event since, but this has been going on for a long, long, long time. Same thing with chemtrails. Same thing with just, carcinogens everywhere you turn. In there's lead in a lot of the glassware that we use. It's just on and on and on. There's been an endless biological war that's been waged on the citizenry of the planet. It's just become a lot more obvious, right? Also talking about things like suppressing testosterone. So you have a pliable male population which might revolt against you. There's been a broad spectrum of things that have been done to attack. And so Bobby Kennedy Jr., to his credit, has been talking about that aspect with the you-know-whats for quite some time. He just does have a very curious background, actually, when you look into it. And Michael Tracy on Twitter did a whole long thread where he really just shredded RFK Jr. with his own posts and comments over the years. And I think there's some merit to that. Is RFK Jr. better than Biden? Well, duh, right? I mean, like, who isn't, right? Like, you know, I would be hard-pressed to randomly throw a dart at a giant board that had all 8 billion people on the planet and to not randomly hit a name of someone who would be more competent and less evil than Joe Biden. So that is a very low bar to casually stroll over without any effort whatsoever, right? So that's meaningless. But, you know, would I be happy with, like, say, a Bobby Kennedy Jr. versus Trump presidential race? Yeah, I'd be ecstatic. But, you know, one of the things also that's been happening the past few weeks is there's lots of rumblings that they're going to get rid of Biden. They're going to get rid of Biden and they're going to get rid of Harris. The question is, what's the ringer that they bring in? And it looks like Michelle Obama with possibly Barack as vice president. Ding! And then if something happened to Michelle and she left or whatever, he wouldn't be voted in. And so even though it's not technically constitutional for Barack to have a third term, I think that they could get him in via putting him in as the VP and then having Michelle leave. And Michelle Obama, I can't stand her, of course, or Big Mike, if you want to go with that conspiracy theory route, which maybe has some merit, actually. Like, I don't care for Michelle Obama, but the Obamas are still very, very popular, especially on the left, which is really flagging in energy right now. And they're popular enough that you could, with a little help from our Dominion BlackRock-owned voting machine friends, could push them over the top, and it would be somewhat plausible. Whereas Biden winning again versus Trump is obviously completely implausible to even to all but the most blue-haired NPC lefties think that Biden is better than Trump. So that's another thing that's been happening during the eclipse. That's been floated quite a bit about maybe getting rid of Biden. And then the really big news. So I saved the last two really big news things for now. So there was an assassination attempt on Putin last week. And either during or right after the eclipse, I forget exactly. I want to say it happened last Thursday, but I'm not 100% on that. But basically, somebody flew a drone with some amount of an explosive package to the top of the Kremlin. Now, was that really Ukraine doing that? The technological level being weak and low makes me think maybe it was Ukraine, right? But it could have also been that the Russians did it themselves in order to have an excuse to go after the nerve center in Kiev, you know, casus belli, more like cause for war. It could have been the Americans did it, knowing that how the Russians would respond. It could have been, who knows? It could have been some EU country. It could have been Israel. It could have been Davos. It could have been the Nazi International, as Joseph Farrell calls the Nazis, legacy Nazis left off after the war. And make no mistake, that faction exists and is out there in the world. So it's unclear who did it, but what is clear is that the Russians were super duper duper pissed about it. Whether they did it themselves or not, it doesn't matter. They at least played the part of that this was a legitimate attempt on Putin, even though it wasn't even remotely close to getting him. That one where they blew up Putin's advisor's car and he didn't get in it, but his daughter did. That was like a real legitimate attempt on Putin's life, it seems. But nonetheless, the Russians are acting as though this was legitimate, regardless of who did it or why. That is very concerning and huge. I don't see, again, the angels have told me, for what it's worth, that there will be no nuclear holocaust, meaning a mega launch, right? Like War Games with Matthew Broderick during the 80s, right? Any of those, where the air raid sirens go off and just there's nukes everywhere kind of thing and everybody dies, right? That's not going to happen. The elites don't want that. The M's don't want that. The M's would consider that if they thought they were losing power, and that's part of the reason that the Luciferians have to be careful of the Molochians, because they are willing to do something like that. But for what it's worth, the angels have told me that all other deities and spirits on earth, angels, Hindu deities, whatever, what do you call that? Norse deities, any Egyptian deities, right? Any non-Moloch deities on earth and spirits, like even including a lot of demons, they don't want a total nuclear holocaust because that would destroy them as well. So neither spirits nor the elites want that to happen. But a limited nuclear exchange, a false flag nuclear exchange, that could happen. And that is a risk. And like they have really turned the ratchet up a notch with this assassination attempt on Putin. And then I saved the biggest piece of news by far for last. Saudi Arabia asked to join the BRICS. And so I am going to share that. Let's see here, because I do want you guys just to see that, because that is such a big deal. Okay, let's see here. Boom, there it is. Yeah, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Turkey apply to join BRICS. I mean, this is huge, guys. This is very close to Saudi Arabia just outright saying that they're not going to take dollars for oil anymore. This is the one step short of that. It's going to happen. The BRICS are planning to develop a new basket case. Excuse me, basket-based global reserve currency, basket case, that's funny, which would pose a serious challenge to the United States. Yeah, so the de-dollarization is continuing apace, and that's a big deal. It's a really big deal that it looks like the U.S. is going to lose its world reserve currency status. And so I like to talk in this channel about the big macro stuff, right? This big conflict I often talk about between the Luciferians and Molochians, and then in the mix there are the Most High people who are just doing their own thing, and then within those factions of Luciferian and Molochian, there's sub-factions. Like, for example, there's the Davos Molochians, and then there's the CCP Chinese Molochians. So that's two factions within the Molochians, and it's even more factional than that, right? Like, there's the Bush family Molochians, there's the Clinton family Molochians, or that's the Bill Gates. And sure, they work together and they have overlap, but ultimately they're their own faction. And if the push came to shove and their back was against the wall, Bill Gates would throw the Clintons under the bus, or vice versa, right? So there are lots of factions actually within even these overarching groups of Molochian mindset, Luciferian mindset, and Most High mindset. I mean, like, look at Most High. I mean, there's the like Christian Most High people, there's Jewish Most High people, there's Hindu Most High people, Buddhist. There's people who don't identify with any major religion, but are in alignment and in resonance with the Most High faction. So if you look in all those groups, even though I often talk about them as though they're monolithic groups, they're actually not. And so what this means, this big change, is that there's going to be de-dollarization is going to continue and intensify. That means that there's going to be inflation in the U.S. If the Operation Sandman thing is true, where all these countries are going to dump bonds at the same time to cripple the U.S., if that's true, and there seems to be some amount of truth to it, that could be devastating because, again, the West is trying to do a controlled demolition of the financial system, for example, slaughtering all the regional banks in order to bring it into the main banks. It's a delicate balancing act they're doing of trying to do a controlled demolition of like crypto with Operation Choke Point 2.0, and also with these regional banks without it tipping over into a crisis which spirals out of control for them. Now, if you were to be observing this and you were, say, Vladimir Putin, and you wanted to stick it to NATO and the WEF, a great way to do that would be to sell all your treasuries and attack the dollar right when, the WEF folks are trying to do this very careful, controlled demolition, Building 7 style. So I'm actually going to end, about a week from now, I'm having two gentlemen from the channel called Black Swan Capitalist, Versan and Vandel Albajara. And these guys are brilliant and they get it. They're not going to go a ton into the occult aspects because they touch on a little bit on their show, but they're mostly like kind of financial guys. But I will tell you, behind the scenes, these guys are very, very savvy. They understand what's going on. They're very impressed with my view on things, and they want to learn more about like the Luciferian Molochian stuff. But they're like, when I was talking to them, they're like, wow, a bunch of things have fallen into place from hearing this. So I'm going to have them on in a couple of weeks, and we're going to go deep on financial. And this channel isn't a financial channel, but let's be real, finances do rule this world. It's the primary way that the Molochians have had control over the planet for the past, at least 1,000 years, especially via banking, right? And especially when they started to introduce fractional reserve and now no reserve fiat money that's lent into existence by the banks. I mean, this is a huge, huge control node. And so I'm going to go into depth on what's going on economically, what the new system that the Molochians and Luciferians, Molochians are trying to put in their great reset dystopian nightmare, and the Luciferians want to put in a somewhat similar technocratic global state, but they're going to allow for a lot more freedom and liberty, right? They believe in competition, whereas the Molochians believe in they're monopolists, right? They don't want competition. So like John D. Rockefeller didn't want competition, he wanted a monopoly. So they're very different. And so but they have certain things that they're going to agree on. So like surveillance state's probably not going away, digital ID is probably not going away, technocracy probably is very likely to continue in the future. AI is going to be used to some degree as a management tool for resource allocation. But I also want people to recognize, and I'm about to end this part and go into the Q&A, I also want people to recognize that we are really, as people who are primarily probably mostly most high aligned, and there might be some folks who watch this that are more of the Luciferian mindset, as I like to say, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I don't align with that, but I appreciate rule of law. I appreciate liberty. I appreciate, self-interested, oh God, what's that word? Basically like being noble out of self-interest, where you're willing to do stuff that helps others, but you want your slice of the pie. I can't think of enlightened self-interest. That's what I was looking for. Meritocracy. There's a lot of things that the Luciferians vibe with that I don't have a problem with. I would prefer maybe a higher octave, something better, but I'm okay with it. And so what people need to realize who are watching this channel is that the biggest wealth transfer in human history is underway. And I think it's incredibly important that we not get frozen in a black pill, hide in the bunker mindset, but try and figure out how can we take advantage of this huge shift in order for us to, as most high folks, be able to create the kind of enclaves of the golden age civilization, right? Which is what I think is sort of the scenario we ought to be thinking about as people who are in alignment with the Most High, not trying to create a global enlightened civilization. That would be great. I was told recently by the angels that that's possible, but it's pretty unlikely because I was told that a significant fraction of the Earth's population would have to achieve a level of spiritual attainment that is significantly above where I'm at, which, not to toot my own horn, but I think most would agree on who watch this channel that I'm a little bit more evolved spiritually than like the average person, or like considerably so than like quite a lot of society. And if it's beyond where I'm at now and it has to be, say, 20% of the Earth's population, that seems a little unlikely. So probably we're going into the Bronze Age, like almost certainly. And that means that there'll be able to be enclaves of people who are aligned with the Most High, and that we will want to work on creating cultures, right? Like mini cultures to where we have that golden age mentality. But it's going to be difficult to do that if we're all broke. So I want to really encourage the mindset of don't just survive these changeover years, make a plan to thrive. Make a plan to secure resources for you and your family that will last generations. And so when I have Verson and Vandel on my show in a couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about all of this stuff. And so that episode will be much more financially based than prior episodes. And we'll be talking about like the quantum financial system, what have you. And we'll be doing a deep dive on that. And so now we're going to switch it over to the, the Q&A section. So I'm just going to give a shout out to people I haven't given shout outs to. Patreons, I mentioned you in the first half. Let's see, is there anyone new on here? Go ahead and throw up a comment if you want me to give you a shout out. So someone I haven't mentioned yet is Story STC, Climo13, Hom is in the hizzy. Nice to see Hom. Brett Alber, Just Me, and I want to comment on what Brett Alber said. Shanjak is here. Relic 1 is here. Mr. Fox is here, and a Truther is here. All right, so we're going to start at the stop, and we're going to answer. And again, if you want your question answered sooner, and you want your question for sure answered, because I'm not going to maybe be able to get to all of these, then just do a super chat, and that will cause your question to float to the top, and we'll answer that first. All right, so first question is by Ridzai, and Ridzai asks, let me make this big now. Let's see, I'm going to have to mess with this a bit. So Ridzai says, Ian, the economic crash related to the transition of Pluto into Aquarius, and the 2008 crash was when Pluto was moving into Capricorn. The Uranus-Pluto square has been operative. I would agree with pretty much all of this, but I think there's more to that question. The Uranus-Pluto square has been operative. Oh, it seems like it's more like a statement rather than a question. Yeah, I mean, Pluto is huge. I actually have Pluto 0 degrees conjunct my ascendant, and so that constant transformation process is something that's just like a way of life for me, whether I like it or not. And so, yeah, Pluto is the planet of alchemy and transformation, among other things. But it's also the planet of the underworld, and it's it's Scorpio, right? It rules Scorpio and tropical zodiac, and so all the qualities of Scorpio that journey through the underworld and transformation, then coming back up and becoming the eagle, which is the ancient symbolic version of Scorpio, is the eagle, and then the eagle alights on the staff of Oichus, the serpent holder, who then becomes Sagittarius, the philosopher, right? And really going up the mountains of human experience, philosophy, high experience. And so that's a great point, Ridzi. I totally agree. Susie said, good memory, Ian. Oh, well, I assure you that is very, it's very context and specific. You reminded me recently that you were my subscriber before the Sam Tripoli in church. And by the way, hey, all tinfoil hatters and Swarm, I'm going to be on Tinfoil Hat here we're recording in mid-June, so I don't know if it'll go up in June. I suspect it'll go up, like, say, the last week of June. And I'm going to try and cross your fingers. I'm going to try and get Sam Tripoli on this channel so I can interview him about being a comedian and the importance of humor in the truth movement. And so, yeah, Truther said late night in Thailand. Hey again, Truther. Mr. Fox said, Ian, would it be fair to say that the WF UN equals Molochians and Trump / the alliance equals Luciferians? Mr. Fox, I don't know who you mean by the alliance, but Trump is a Luciferian for sure. The WEF. And so remember, all of these power elite groups, they're filled to the gills with Molochians and Luciferians both, because any kind of intelligent planfulness, technology, any of that all comes from the Luciferians. The Molochians are very dull. They're really not that smart. They appear smart, right? When but Ian, what about the Great Reset? That's like meticulously planned. Yeah, Luciferians did that. The Luciferians helped them with all the planning, all the technology, all of that. The Molochians have ruled by having natural law at their back. They had the wind in their sails, and they were irresistible. It was, according to natural law during the Kali Yugas, they just dominated, and that's about to end. By the way, I'm going to have Bibu Dev Misra, the gentleman who wrote about the Yugas that I often talk about on this channel, how Kali Yuga ends in 2025. He is just finishing up a book, and I'm going to have him on the show as soon as his book is done to do a deep dive on the Yugas and why this is controversial. But I'm of the opinion that Sri Yukteswar and Rudolf Steiner, both men that I think are exemplars among the very best humanity has ever offered. I hold them in the highest of esteem, but you know what? People get stuff wrong, and Steiner and Yukteswar got the Yugas just dead wrong. The Kali Yuga absolutely did not end in 1899 or whatever it was they said. Hello, the 20th century. World War I, World War II, Vietnam War, blah, 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 yakety smackety. No, the Kali Yuga absolutely did not end in 1899. That's just wrong. And I've been told that they were intentionally given bad information by spirits because it was somehow important to evolution at that time. And so, that doesn't mean that just because, again, it wasn't me. I just stumbled across someone else's work. It doesn't mean that Bibhu Dev Misra is somehow more enlightened or incredible than Rudolf Steiner or Sri Yukteswar. I wouldn't make that claim, and I doubt he would. He just is right about this. He's just right about the Yugas, like he figured it out. And that happens, sometimes Michael Jordan missed a shot and some guy off the bench got the rebound and put the ball back in and won the game. It does happen that even the greats make mistakes, and it just is conclusively, like, on the face of it, true. We did not end the Kali Yuga in 1899. Didn't happen. Did not happen. And so I get a lot of hate about that because people think I'm trying to elevate myself, which it's not even my theory, or Bibhu Dev Misra above Sri Yukteswar and Rudolf Steiner, and I'm absolutely not. I'm just saying they got that one wrong, and he has it right. And if you look at the way that Bibhu Dev Misra's Yuga cycle lines up with historical events, it's like, whoop. And if you look at what Sri Yukteswar and Rudolf Steiner said about historical events, it's like, it don't make no sense. So you can feel the change in the air right now. There was no such intense feeling of change in the air from 1899 to 1900. There really wasn't. It wasn't until the 19 teens that things really started to have an era of extreme change, but it was really just more of the same with just increased technological death. So Truther says, hello, Ian. Thank you. Susie says, sexy event has happened with Binance having trouble with fees for Bitcoin. That's also true. The gas fees or whatever have super increased with Bitcoin on Binance, the biggest exchange globally. I believe Binance is just totally corrupt. You should not have any coins on any exchange. Actually, you should have it all in a cold wallet. That's critical and in a Faraday bag if possible. But you don't want to have it on exchanges. And I think Binance is the shadiest exchange out there. And they may very well get rid of Tether soon or call out the Tether, obviously corrupt Ponzi scheme where they're just printing money. There's no way that Tether has the amount of treasuries they claim. I don't trust it all. The USDC with Circle, that stable coin, I think is, much better than Tether. Tether, I think, is going to blow up, and that's going to cripple the crypto market. So Susie says, yes, you were right, but I knew you were a winky face. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. There was a lot of stuff that happened during the eclipse. So a lot of pilot programs for CDBC in the US. Yeah, FedNow is clearly part of that, and that's coming up right around the debt ceiling crisis, right around the time that the Ripple lawsuit is probably going to end or have recently ended. Yeah, it's crazy. So then Ridzai says, in debt service failure with the hyperinflation and hyperinflationary money printing, it's an internal implosion. Implosion into what? Honest money based on real assets above and below ground for creation and medium. Yeah, I mean, it can go into that. Texas right now is working on a basic, not stable coins, but gold and silver backed Texas crypto. And Dubai is working on a gold backed or tokenized gold crypto. I even may have an announcement in the future about some people I know who are working on a similar project at a very high level. A lot of people are working on exactly this, and the answer seems to be merging, modern cryptography and peer-to-peer transfer kind of stuff by tokenizing gold and silver, otherwise backing crypto with gold and silver in some capacity. So, pegging, things like that. That's the other thing is Russia and Iran are working on a gold-pegged cryptocurrency to sell oil in. So, yeah, it's definitely happening, Rizzo. You're really right. A lot of credit unions in big trouble. Yeah, that's a damn shame. Nobody should be leaving a credit union to go to these horrific nightmare banks like U.S. Bank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and J.P. Morgan. Get out of here. Oh, that reminds me. Wells Fargo got the same kind of notice last week that was given to, I want to say, Lehman Brothers a month before it collapsed. It might have been Bear Stearns a month before it collapsed. But if Wells Fargo collapsing seems a little unlikely to me because they're a stockholder in the Federal Reserve, the private banking cartel known as the Federal Reserve that a lot of people think is part of the government, but absolutely is not. They're a stockholder in the Federal Reserve, if I recall correctly. I'm almost positive that Wells Fargo is. And so I don't see how they can fail because the Fed will, of course, bail them out unless they agree to it for some plan that's behind the scenes. We'll see. But doing a bail-in and then, screwing all the depositors at Wells Fargo somehow, but then rescuing the senior bondholders or something, yeah, I could see that, something like that. Ridzai says, BRICS will send into the multipolarity financial agreement. Fed is a debt money Ponzi scheme and the dollar's dead, no life support. War will not allow it to come back either. Banks are dead too. Yep, tend to agree with most of that. All right. Story STC says, wish there were captions. I'm at work. I'll have to listen when I get home. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, sometimes when I try and do captions on YouTube, I haven't done it in a while, but they wanted me to upload it from some service or something, or I had to do some third-party thing, and I just didn't have time for that. I apologize that I'll see if I can figure that out. That's it would be great. My dream, I will just tell you folks, my dream is I would love to have a company called White Lotus of Light Productions that was like a Gaia TV, but with more discernment, meaning not putting on obvious psyop, obvious junk conspiracy stuff. There's certain things that are really crazy that I give some credence to. For example, if you haven't watched it, everyone ought to take the time to watch the Real Life X-Files, my interview with Cynthia Dreyer, the ex-wife of Phil Schneider. She makes a lot of outrageous claims in there, but a lot of them are backed up, and a lot of stuff that Phil Schneider said back in the day has proven to be true. And I noticed I went on Reddit doing research for that, and in the Reddit conspiracy forum, there was a very heavy-handed moderator who outright lied and claimed that Cynthia's only evidence for Phil Schneider being murdered was that she saw it in a psychic vision. That's utterly false. She listed all the very real, very tangible things that pointed to, and obviously that he was had a murder-suicide. It was something he said, whether it was his stories or that he was had access to and information to other people's stories that were true, that I'm not 100% sure of. What I am certain of, because I know her pretty well, because I worked with her for years, is that Cynthia's an honest person. Was she maybe naive and maybe some of that stuff wasn't true, or were some of Phil's memories wrong? Maybe. I actually think that Phil had legitimate memories come back, and that's what happened there. And I think that most, if not all, of what he said is true. That just the fact that tunneling machines exist, and that where do they use those big tunneling machines? Those big round tunneling machines that make perfectly round tunnels? Are you guys aware of any tunnels that are perfectly round that aren't like a half circle? I'm not. Are you aware? The only one I can think of is the one that goes into Cheyenne Mountain, the original or only acknowledged deep underground military base. Where are they using these giant tunnelers? Are they using it in gold mines? No. Look at a gold mine. It has it doesn't have an entrance like that. So they're not using it in mining. What are they using it for? They're using it for the deep underground military bases. And Phil Schneider talked about these machines. He was among the first, and he's right. They exist. But back when he said it, they lied and said, oh, there's no such machines. That's a lie, blah, blah, blah. Nope, it's true. So, yeah, let's see here. Clemo13 says, love your content. Hope all is well. Thank you. Well, thank you, Clemo13. I hope all is well with you, of course. Hom then says, and I need to take a sip here, folks. Well, This is very sad. So Ham's parents forced them to take, and I'm sorry, Ham, I think you're male, but I'm not sure. Could be a woman, I'm not sure. So my apologies, I don't know one way or the other. But Ham says, my parents forced me to take the you-know-what, and Ham is concerned, will it hinder my spiritual progress? I don't care if it damages their health. Well, you should care, but I hope it doesn't damage my spiritual progress. Well, some amount of those were saline. That seems certainly true. I remember in the summer of 2021, early summer, there was a bunch of reports of that people were finding entire batches were just saline, that they didn't have anything in them except for saline. And very quickly, those stories disappeared. There were stories from all over the world about this, and they just got straight up memory hold. And then they were replaced with stories of a specific nurse in Germany who had replaced the you-know-what with saline, which that woman is a heroine. And in the future, I think that they should build that woman a statue. But that story then was the only thing that would come up when you'd look up saline in those shots. But saline was fairly widespread, especially, I don't know if you're in the US. It seems to be very based on regions. Until recently, I thought most of it went to the South and Midwest. I'm hearing now from certain people that actually there's a lot of long-term negative effects that are happening in the West and East Coast, and so that may not be true. There's the Zelenko protocol, the same protocol that works for just the sea itself, the March 2020 thing that happened. That same protocol works to help hinder the spikes from doing damage. We don't know how long the spikes keep being created. There is some stuff that seems to point towards immune suppression as part of the genetic code in it. But I want to get to the substance of your question where you say it doesn't hinder your spiritual progress. And I will just go ahead and do this, that if you want to, Ham, you don't have to, but I will just give people a repeat after me. What I want to remind everyone is we are all sovereign. It's a free will universe, and we own everything within our field. Yes, people can come in and punch us or kill us or whatever, but on an energetic level, on a spiritual sovereignty level, we're absolute sovereigns of our energy field and our spirit and our soul. And so you can say the following, and this will help greatly limit or mitigate the spiritual consequences of having taken that. And so give me just a second. I'm just going to ask Archangel Michael to be present here with me. Archangel Michael, I ask that you are present with me. I also ask that you go to any of my viewers who are feeling scared or worried about the shot and offer them comfort and guidance and protection. And so you want to say the following: with my divine, by my divine sovereign free will, I hereby reject and renounce the seed of the void, the seed of Moloch. I hereby dissolve any karmic attachments to the seed of Moloch. I hereby reject and renounce any lower astral energies from the seed of Moloch. I hereby reclaim my sovereignty. I hereby announce to the universe that I am free of the seed of Moloch. I reject it utterly. By my divine sovereign free will, it is done. And so it is. When you say that you're taking responsibility for what's happened, and you're also realigning yourself with the trajectory you were on prior to taking that, you took it under duress. You took it without complete information, and you have a choice to reject it. You also have a choice for people who have like taken on demonic pacts. You can always dissolve those unilaterally. There is a consequence to it, and you do have to pay for the consequence. And in this case, there is a consequence to what you've done, and it could be that there's going to be some health issues. But if you repeated what I just said, you will have a greatly diminished spiritual impact based on what you said. And the words I used aren't as important, the specific words, as the intent, and basically invoking your divine sovereign free will to reject that. That's what you can do, and that's what anyone who took that can do. I highly, highly, highly recommend you look into the Zelenko protocol, and there's lots of other stuff out there. Dr. Peter McAuliffe is doing stuff. Lots of people are putting out more and more, and the angels told me eventually there'll be complete and total cures. A lot of people are putting out information on how to mitigate any physical damage, and please do address the physical aspect of things. Your heart's in the right place, that the spiritual is the most important. That is true. But the physical impacts definitely matter. Now, it is possible, and I don't mean to scare you, but I just want to say this. Some people are suffering more from feeling disconnected from their higher self. I'm not sure if that's the case with you. But again, invoking your own divine sovereign free will around that can help reestablish that link. It may not be as strong as it was before. There are consequences to having made that decision, unfortunately. But you can, again, mitigate and minimize it by addressing it directly. And so much love to you, Hom, and I hope that you're able to resolve that. All right, let's see here. Yeah. So talking about the Obamas coming in, right? So is Obama really a practicing occultist, or is it just conspiracy theory? If he is indeed a practicing occultist, then what type of occultism exactly? Like what sects or lodges is he in? Well, I mean, that's pretty well hidden, like I don't know the exact answers to that, but there's plenty of evidence. Particularly there was a like Rothschild or something party that Obama was at, and Obama was dressed in like some kind of gender bending drag, also kind of demonic outfit. And it was definitely Barack. And so, I mean, Barack Obama is pretty clearly a Molochian to me. To answer your question, what lodges or sects is he in? I don't know. I mean, that's hidden, and it's somewhat irrelevant in the sense of, it doesn't matter what the name of the lodge is. The end result is he's a Molochian, and, pretty sure he harms children, stuff like that. There's stuff that points towards that. Biden's first win was the biggest blank in U.S. history. I got to be careful. There can only be a rope for this kind of treason. Well, I have to be careful because of the algorithm and legal stuff, but let's just say you have a lot of solid points there. What is your opinions? And Hom, I'm going to have to start skipping some of these to give other people a chance. What is your opinion of subliminal messages in songs when they're reversed? I heard a Travis Scott song backwards, and I heard Hail Lucifer, Hail Satan, Beelzebub, etc. Well, I mean, that's pretty clear cut. If you're hearing that, then I guess that's probably true and intentionally done. It wouldn't surprise me. That always had kind of a ring of truth to it since I first heard about that in the 80s. And I mean, like, it was really big in the 70s. Was I think when it first got really started, and especially with a lot of like hard rock stuff. There's definitely something to it. So Brett Albert says nukes are fake. Well, it might be. Nukes are fake makes my antenna go up a little nervous, like the way that I think terrain theory, saying viruses are just exomes and they don't cause any disease. It's possible, but a lot of this kind of stuff has seemed to have arisen in the past few years, which makes it suspect to me. Honestly, I think nukes are fake. Terrain theory, meaning that viruses, if you lick a petri dish of Marburg, you'll be just fine, right? That level of terrain theory belief, right? Not people saying that you need to have a good diet and exercise and stuff, duh, of course. But people saying that all that matters is diet and exercise, and there's no such things as contagious diseases, is just, to me, obviously on the face of it, false. And nobody believed that. Nobody believed that. Nobody believed that or talked about it at all until since March 2020. Makes it look to me like a psyops to divide the truth movement. I think the same thing about nukes are fake, to be honest. I just think that it's to discredit the truth movement. And then, of course, the big daddy to discredit the truth movement, and this will piss some amount of people off, is flat Earth. Flat Earth is a psyops to discredit the truth movement. Always has been. Nobody believed it until about 10 years ago when suddenly rappers and stuff started talking about it. Out of the blue, it's a Tavistock psyops to discredit the truth movement. And a lot of people say, well, NASA lies all the time, Ian. Sure, yeah, NASA lies all the time. They put up altered images all the time. Sure, they put up altered images all the time. They didn't really go to the moon the way they said. Yeah, no, I agree, actually. I believe they used anti-gravity, which probably has radiation shielding effect that, they don't want to release that. I'm pretty sure they cracked anti-gravity in the early 60s, and free energy, same thing. And they used it actually in the moon landing. And that's the secret of the moon landing. Not that it didn't happen. They were shielded by the Van Allen belts because they had a module that had anti-gravity capability within it. And they would turn it on and then they could go through the Van Allen belts. And then that's how they go pop and pop off the surface of the moon in such a weird looking way. And a lot of the moon landing video and stuff is fake for sure. But that doesn't then mean that the Earth is flat just because NASA's lying about stuff. I think the Earth, and I talk about this in that Cynthia Dreyer, Phil Schneider's ex-wife interview, hollow Earth, that to me, to where it's a minimum, there's deep underground military bases and a honeycombed Earth, that's for sure true. Are there also entrances at the poles with the tube tours? Well, it is very curious that no planes are allowed to fly over the poles, that military jets will intercept you and threaten to shoot you down for your safety to go over the poles. It's not because it's a giant goddamn ice wall. Like, I know people who have gone all the way around Antarctica. It's an island, bro. Or a continent, rather. But you can't fly over the middle of it. Why? So tube toruses appear all throughout nature and an observable reality. If you have spinning water and you drop a spinning ball of oil into it, it'll spin and it'll form a tube torus, which then you can extrapolate that and go, okay, Earth's not flat. It's probably a tube torus or semi-spherical in shape. I think it's a tube torus. Doesn't mean there's like a sun at the center of the Earth or whatever, which is kind of an out there theory version of hollow Earth, maybe. But I think that flat Earth may be very well in part to distract from hollow Earth, along with discrediting the truth movement as a whole. And I'm of the opinion that the nukes are fake thing is similar. All right. Multiple people believe nukes are fake. Okay. Well, I just addressed that. So you're entitled to your belief, but I do not agree. There's just too much stuff points to measurable radiation, et cetera, et cetera. The Petro won with Pakistan buying oil from Russia using the Chinese currency. But the important point is the way that they do it. Digitally using the MIR backbone under ISO 222 SWIFT type criteria. Yeah. I mean, like, this is the kind of thing that's coming on board, and it's coming on board. And I'm just going to mark this so I come back to it. That's the kind of thing that's coming online with the new whatever quantum financial system, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to talk to the Black Swan capitalists about all this kind of stuff. So let's see here. I want to see. Okay. I'm skipping some by Hom because Hom's had quite a few questions, and Ridzai. I want to get to people who I haven't answered a question yet, and then I'll go back up to the top. So Story says, thoughts on pole shift, real or psyop? I mean, they seem real. It seems we're in the middle of one. The universe is electrical in nature. I hope to have on David Van Doren, I think his name is, to talk about electric universe theory and have a whole series about that. We're having the hardest time in the universe connecting for some reason. It is Mercury retrograde right now, which has been smacking me. And so that could be why we're struggling. But I plan to have people on to talk about the electric universe theory, and pole shifts would be a part of that. Yeah, I think it's real. Do I think it's going to doom all of us, or like really crazy things where people go way over the top on it? I don't know. I don't believe in the like loose skin theory of the Earth, that the entire continents just massively shift all at once in dramatic faction. I think that the Earth's magnetic sphere collapsing and then us getting inundated by solar particles and like energies and perhaps information from the sun and the central sun. I think that feels intuitively true to me. That seems to be correct. It really depends on how far out there you want to get in terms of, can we just not trust any science that's out there? Like, is 100% of all science false? I mean, clearly applied science works. That's how we're having this conversation. So I don't think all science is false by any means. Are there quite a few multiple concurrent science-based psyops occurring? Yes. Might they use a pole shift as a psyops? Perhaps. I mean, that could be part of the black pilling psyops, right? To get people to give up and get scared. I just don't see a lot of value to it. It's the same reason I reject flat Earth. Flat Earth is irrelevant. Like, first of all, it just doesn't work for an astrologer. If you're an astrologer, unless you have had a home invasion, like Santos Bonacci, you don't believe in astrology. Or, I mean, you don't believe in flat Earth. You can't, because the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere, like, I've seen flat earthers try to explain this away with this crazy Mobius strip thing for the skies. It just doesn't make any sense. It just is insane. And so, like, flat earth just makes no sense on the face of it to me. And therefore flat earth being the truth and hiding flat earth being the psyops, it doesn't seem plausible to me, because why? What benefit is there? There is no benefit. Like, that would help the Molochians with their whole demoralization blackpilling campaign, that we're stuck in a snow globe with them and we can't get away, is a very depressing thought, that there's no anything else in the universe except for us. To me, is a very depressing thought. I don't like that at all. It doesn't feel true, and it feels like actually flat earth is a more of a blackpilling thing than saying that they hide flat earth. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, why would they hide the JFK assassination? Duh, they don't want to get caught. Why would they lie about central banks? Duh, they don't want to get caught. Chemtrails, why? They don't want to get caught. 9/11, blah, blah, blah. COVID-19. Like, look at all the different conspiracy theories out there that are real, and they all make perfect sense immediately, within 2 seconds. I don't have to sit there and go, gosh, how does it benefit them to lie about JFK, right? I don't need to think about it. It's immediately on the face of it obvious why. And so likewise with, why would they lie about flat earth? There's no reason to. There's no benefit there. And for them to maintain a multi-century lie across all fields of huge amounts of fields of endeavor is just nonsense to me. Plus, like, you can do physical observations that disprove flat earth. And so pole shift being a psyop, I just don't see it. I actually, to give credit to the people who said nukes are fake earlier, I can see an angle on that, right? Like, being afraid of nukes, like, you can't challenge the power of the elites because they can just nuke you. Like, okay, hey, at least with that, I still think incorrect theory, at least there's a reason why that psyops would be being trotted out there, that nukes are real when in fact it's not a real thing. They made it up, right? Which is what this nukes are fake theory is. That has some legs to me. Likewise, this pole shift as a psyops, as a black pilling psyops, right? To make everyone get scared and give up and not participate in the financial system and not resist elite tyranny. Yeah, I could see that maybe. I don't think so, though. My opinion is I think that pole shifts are real, and I don't know how it works. Yes, and tied to brilliant follow-up story, STC, as Joseph Rowe would say, I doff my hat to you. Absolutely correct. There's certainly Earth disasters that are very much tied to the Yuga cycles, and it could be connected to pole shifts, and we'll get more into that in that electric universe theory. So David Van Doren, I think that's your name. Buddy, if you're watching this, like, man, we need to get that rolling. So Mr. Fox says, they just serve Satan, the dark force of the universe, death, decay, the opposition. They embody that energy on Earth that rises above all religions, cults, sex, lodges at the top. Absolutely. Talking about the Obamas being Molochian. Totally. So Susie Gemini said, thrive for sure. Just for people who missed it, don't just try and survive these next few years. Try and take advantage of this incredible shifts in technology and ability to create wealth, and also start taking proactive steps to insulate yourself right? Like, can your job be replaced by robots and AI? If the answer is yes, right, you do something physical, right? You do something that's planning about physical, you might need to start training yourself up in such a way that you have a protected skill. I'm very fortunate in that what I do is not something that AI and robots can replicate. You know, I do spiritual advising. They've had robot astrology out for 20 years now. And people will always prefer to come to a real astrologer rather than let a computer crunch the numbers. So arts, creativity. Yes, I know they have, right now it's the hotness, what do you call it? Oh man, I can't remember what that's called. The AI painting program. It's not Chat GPT, it's Horizons or something like that. I forget what it's called. But anyways, the thing that makes paintings and stuff, the AI artist, and there's AI music now. I think people will be like, initially be like, oh, wow. And for sure, corporations are going to use AI art and AI music, but people are going to crave that spiritual energy that's put into true art and true music and just creative stuff in general. Creativity and spirituality and interpersonal skills like charisma, all of that is going to matter massively in the upcoming time period as a way to not get beaten out by AI. But what's going to happen is that the things that AI and robotics take over, and that genie's out of the bottle, folks. Don't think that's going away. No matter who wins, AI and robotics, I believe, are here to stay. It's about how do we guide that. And I'm actually going to do an entire series on AI because I think it's worth doing a lot of in-depth deep dives on that. But start figuring out how to retool, reskill yourself so you're in a creative context that isn't like, I think like architecture, for example, like in city planning and stuff like that, that's going to be replaced by AI, right? Because AI will just be able to do that better. People might say, oh, well, surgeons will never be replaced. But, oh, yeah, surgeons will get replaced. Doctors will get replaced. Anything that's like kind of logical step process about physical activities that doesn't really require creativity. It just requires knowledge and expertise and being able to repeat stuff, right? That will get replaced over the next 15 to 20 years by AI and robotics. So if you're in a field to where AI and robotics can take over, start figuring out how you can move into a different thing that AI and robotics will never be able to take over, and recognize that that field is going to become a lot more competitive. This pressure will be put on us. You know, like when the steam engine came along, that changed everything, and a lot of people lost their jobs. How many farriers do you know? Not a lot of call for fixing horseshoes, like cutting off the part of the hoof that is maybe like cracked or whatever and putting a horseshoe on there. Not a lot of call for that, but that was a big, big job title 200 years ago, right? Technology always destroys jobs, and this is going to be a doozy. This is going to be the single biggest dislocation ever in history in terms of jobs, AI and robotics coming on, no doubt about it. But don't be a victim. Take control of your life. Figure out how to retool and do it right now. Start thinking about it before your job is replaced and then you have to think of it quickly. You know, and they're going to do UBI and all this kind of stuff too. But, you know, we'll get deeper in the weeds on that some other time. So thank you, Susie, for that comment. So Truther says, is some blue-skinned god really coming to save the world? Well, that's interesting because when you drink too much silver, you get silver ageria, or your skin becomes blue. In fact, if you go and watch, should I say that? Never mind, I'm not going to say that. Let's just say there are famous people out there who have drank a lot of colloidal silver and they get silver ageria and blue skin. And I have to wonder if maybe these Hindu gods had taken on a tremendous amount of silver and perhaps gold, like monoatomic gold, ormus, and silver, like maybe colloidal silver and things like that. And then they had higher brain function and abilities than a regular person. And that's where the blue-skinned Hindu thing comes. So do I think that Kalki is going to come save the world? I mean, it's possible. It's possible that there'll be some kind of major event where an avatar comes in and kicks ass. Like it might be that like the Antichrist comes and then down comes the avenging Kalki, Krishna coming back as Kalki, or the return of Jesus, the Jesus the angrier, right? Coming out to throw all the sinners in the lake of fire. Something like that is going to happen in metaphorical form of sinners getting cast in the lake of fire. To me, that's a metaphor for Molochianism and Moloch itself being cast back into the pit. So will someone come and save us? I think that mentality is really dangerous, and we should say no. Do I think that there's stuff going on behind the scenes, both spiritually and also like the Luciferian Molochian, that will sort of be like being rescued by an external force? Yes. Should we rely on that? Absolutely not. Start taking control of your life. Start making sure that you have food, water, medicine, first and foremost, then gold, silver, XRP, XOM, or other crypto that you think will hold value, maybe Bitcoin or Ethereum. Do your own due diligence on that. I'm not a financial advisor, but doing that and having the means to defend yourself, and especially building local community in the physical real world, all of that is really important. Don't get caught up in any of these psyops around being immobilized, whether it's being black-pilled or thinking, oh, I don't have to do anything because Q and the white hats are coming in to ride in from the rescue. Or even listening to this channel, you might conclude, I can just sit back and relax and the Luciferians will save us from the Molochians. Well, it seems that that's going to happen, but I believe that that's going to happen because people are going to take action. And we can have common cause with the Luciferians to want to overthrow the Molochians, but we also need to be inserting that most high energy, that most high consciousness immediately as the Luciferians are taking over. While we have a chance, the Luciferians will be willing to offer concessions to us if we help them overthrow the Molochians. And that's the time to where we get concessions in there, where we get stuff that will help bring about a golden age society in the future. And so I think that we can't be apathetic. We have to be very active. We have to take responsibility. We have to get the F out of victim mentality. If you've been really, really traumatized and you justifiably feel you've been victimized, I can say I was victimized. I was very intensely victimized for the first, especially like 10 years of my life, intensely victimized. And I held on to a victim story for a long time until eventually I realized I had to take responsibility for my own life and my own healing. And that's what I've done since then. And, I do offer spiritual counseling sessions. And so for people who are watching this who, have a trauma history and you want to try a spiritual method of healing rather than doing counseling. And I'm not saying get off your meds and don't go to your counselor anymore and instead see me. I'm saying if you feel that that spiritual guidance and help would help you, I am here and available to do that. But you got to get out of that victim mentality, or else you're never going to be able to take control of your life. And I'm not saying you, truther, are in a victim mentality. I'm talking about people who are out there who are in a victim mentality, which makes it more likely that you'll get black-pilled, by the way. It also makes it more likely that you'll feel paralyzed and want to be rescued. And what I'm saying is that, yes, there are forces of good at work in the world, Mr. Frodo, to quote Gandalf, and there's also forces of, gray hats or whatever, the Luciferians, but we cannot be relying on some external force to save us at all. First of all, that's a survive scenario. And what I want people on my channel to do is thrive. Go look up Catherine Austin Fitz and Solari Report, and she lays it out there on how to thrive currently and ongoing. We need to thrive. We need to be strong and healthy and ready to make most high enclaves once the Luciferians overthrow the Molochians. And we need to start that now. So sorry to get on my soapbox there, but I wanted to do that. Okay, so I'm going to go down. Okay, Josh Whitehall, haven't talked to him. And so I skipped over some people's things. If you want to make sure that your question's answered, I am going to be ending this in 40 minutes. If you want to ensure that your question's answered, help support the channel, do a super chat. $1 is great. Whatever you want to do. And I will guarantee then that I will answer a question before I end the show. Otherwise, especially if you've asked many, many questions, which is great. I love the enthusiasm. I love the all the ideas and exchange of information that's happening on the channel, the beginnings of the community that's forming on this channel. I love it. That's what I want. But I do have a limited amount of time, and so I'm going to get as many different people as I can, and also I will definitely answer any super chats I get. Okay. Josh Whitehall, what are your thoughts on the God of the Old Testament? Oh boy, is this a doozy? Is this a loaded question? And it's one I got to answer often, and I'm just going to have to do a show about it. I'm of the opinion that Yahweh / Jehovah is a syncretic Near Eastern God that is a storm war god that seems to me to be a Mars or Aries god, meaning that God is an aspect of Mars. That God is extremely warlike, Jehovah and Yahweh, extremely warlike. The Jews and Judaism arose during the age of Aries, and that's one of the reasons that they have the ram's horn as one of the sacred implements that the rabbis have. And so that's another hint that we're dealing with Aries. Now, people will say, oh, but what about the black cube stuff? Well, that black cube stuff is Saturn related. And that doesn't mean, by the way, that when you see different groups that, like, for example, that little black cube that I forget what it's called, that certain Orthodox Jewish people have that has a piece of the Torah, there is a higher aspect to Saturn. And the higher aspect of Saturn is like the lawgiver, right? And so like the 10 Commandments is a Saturnian thing, actually. It's the higher octave, the higher aspect of Saturn. So I don't want people to take it to a anti-Semitic or anti-Muslim place when you see the cube symbolism that's Saturn. Remember, the Molochians have hijacked the Abrahamic religions at the highest levels. They also seem to have hijacked a number of, like, there's probably some high-level Hindus. There's one that comes to mind immediately. It seems Satguru is a Molochian. You see him at the WEF. You see him rubbing shoulders with a bunch of Epstein client list folks. So that guy is pretty much clearly Molochian. So I just want to be clear that I'm not just bashing on the Abrahamic faith. I was raised Catholic. I love Yeshua Jesus. Jesus to me is the most pure, one of the most pure, well-known messengers of the Most High, like emissary of the Most High. I believe that Jesus was at the absolute pinnacle level of consciousness. Jesus has since become a god in his own right of this planet. And so that's not any disrespect to Jesus. And anyone who thinks that Jesus is the truth and the way, that is a viable path. As long as you're not being bigoted and nasty to other people and saying you're better than and supremacist, that's a totally viable path. So with that in mind, the God of the Old Testament is a Mars god that was at war with a Saturn god. And what's the Saturn god in this case? The lower aspect of Saturn. And that's key, lower aspect of Saturn, Moloch, right? So you see it often throughout history that Mars goes to war with Saturn, and Mars can make some great headway at first, but Mars always loses to Saturn eventually. Another classic example of this is Hitler was a temporary avatar of Mars. Jesus was a solar avatar from birth and embodied the solar energy. And like the Most High to me is Jupiter, Kazemi, 0 degrees conjunct the sun. And that's the energy of the Most High, is a combination of the highest aspect of Jupiter and the highest aspect of the sun. It's both, right? Just like Lucifer is a combination of Venus and Mercury, and possibly even just a skosh of some Mars in there, some other stuff. Some of these beings are conglomerate of multiple energies. And so the God of the Old Testament is a usurper God. It is not the Most High. It grabs some of the elements of Most High worship that had come down from Atlantean times, I believe, which, by the way, that's one of the things the Templar are doing, is trying to recover Atlantean and Silver Age era spiritual fragments, or what's called the primordial doctrine, according to Timothy Hogan, the Grand Master of my Templar order. And I would say that the Templar historically are a mix of, and I am going to get into this a bit more later. The Templar are a mix of the Luciferian impulse and the Most High impulse. And they worked hand in glove with the Molochian Venetian black nobility back in the day. So things aren't as discrete as people want to believe, that they're just totally separate and like, I'm a church going person and I never do anything Molochian. Well, if you're in the US and you pay taxes, unfortunately you live inside a Molochian system. And if you work in a corporation, there's a good chance that it's a Molochian or at best Luciferian corporation, in which case now you understand why we can't look at things as, oh, the WEF and every member of it is Molochian. It's not true. A ton of the WF people are also Luciferians. The UN, someone brought up the UN earlier. The UN has a huge Luciferian component to it. They even have stuff like the Lucius Trust and so forth. And I mean, this could be an entire, see, this is why I want to do an entire episode on this, is that the God of the Old Testament to me is a usurper God, and is not the Most High. There's elements of Most High worship in the Old Testament, like Psalms is beautiful. That's actually an angelic. It's a spell book of angelic invocations that's encoded. The Book of Psalms. So that aspect of the Old Testament is a Most High transmission that came through in the Old Testament. There's stuff in the Old Testament about slavery, which is Molochian, and maybe it was contextual, of sell your daughter for exactly 5 shekels because that was the milieu of the time. It's complicated, is my point. And so I would need to go into this in greater depth than I can do here. So hopefully that at least is a little bit of interest there. And I plan to eventually do an episode on this exact question because it's very deep, it's very nuanced, and you have to be careful because I don't want to alienate people who, are of the Abrahamic faiths, of which a huge swath of the Most High faction is people from the Abrahamic faiths. There's lots of people who are in alignment with the Most High who do not identify as in the Abrahamic faiths. People need to understand that. That said, there is a huge contingent, especially of Christians, who are Most High aligned. There's also a lot of people who claim to be Christian who are Molochian, Westboro Baptist Church, for example. So just because someone claims to be Christian or goes to church does not therefore mean that they are in alignment with the Most High. And someone can be, maybe listens to heavy metal weirdly and is in alignment with the Most High. Probably not, but it is possible. So let's see here. Oh, I just got a first super chat. So just to show you guys, the minute I get a super chat, we go right to it. Ron Free. Okay, so let me put a marker here real quick and let me go down to Ron Free. Oh, Ron Free and Brett. Okay, here we go. So I think, so Ron Free did it first and then Brett just did a super sticker. So watch Mr. Mythos, Yahweh was a dragon video. Yeah, this is a really intriguing theory that Yahweh is a dragon. Okay, so it seems that in ancient times, for sure giants were around. I just want to say that. For sure giants existed. There is some evidence that dragons also may have existed. Now, dragons are sometimes referred to as a class of earth elementals, and there do seem to be periodic cycles of time where the veils between worlds thin. And so the Fae or the fairies, they are behind a specific sort of pocket dimension that they created called the veil. There is a similar other veil. The veil is used for many different things, but there is another veil sort of that keeps us to where we don't see directly or interact directly with angels and demons, for exactly, in terms of they're not going to knock a cup off your counter like a cat, right? Not that they would want to, but I'm just saying they can't usually have a physical impact on physical space. So there's some who say that at different periods of history, based on like cycles of the planetary energies, cycles of the sun, where you are in terms of around the galactic center, that there's times where the veils between these worlds become thinner. And it seems clear from the historical record that the veil was at least very different during the time of the Old Testament, say, 1500 BC. So could there have been a dragon, an actual dragon that was a usurper god? It's an intriguing and very sexy theory. Um, I haven't investigated it enough to really make an educated comment. Um, I tend to think of things on a multidimensional level. By that, I mean, I don't think it's one way or the other, but can be multiple. So, for example, it could be a temporary avatar of Mars that also happened to be a dragon spirit. So it could be both what I said earlier and also have been a physical or was able to interact heavily with the physical world dragon. That's possible based on the occult laws that I know. I don't know how much veracity or how much faith I put into it. I really need to check out Mr. Mythos and see if maybe the maybe this dragon theory has weight. It's very intriguing. I'm of the personal opinion, and I can't prove this, but I'm the personal opinion. The closest proof I can give is the wall of the Ishtar Gate in Babylon. It had all kinds of different animals, and all of the animals exist, but it also has a unicorn, and it also has a dragon. And I've seen the actual Ishtar Gate because it was moved brick by brick from Iraq to Berlin. And I've actually seen, and I think I touched, you're not supposed to, but I'm pretty sure I did. I've actually passed through and seen the actual Ishtar Gate, and there is definitely a dragon on the side. That is not, people will say it's a legacy dinosaur or whatever. Those aren't necessarily different things. All right. So let's see here. Brett Elber also sent a super sticker, and he goes, let's see here. Can I be in your enclave if I think the earth is flat? Because it is. Yeah, I don't discriminate against flat earthers. I do go after that theory a lot. But I believe everyone's entitled to their beliefs. I just find that very often when I discuss things with flat earthers, they get very hostile with me very quickly. I get frustrated with it sometimes because for me as an astrologer, it doesn't make sense. It just straight up my observable physical phenomenon I view with my own face eyes. It doesn't make sense based on the model that flat earthers give. And certainly having the Southern Cross in the Southern Hemisphere and the Big Dipper in the Northern Hemisphere, to me, that requires some weird Mobius strip firmament sky, whatever. I think the firmament, by the way, is a reference perhaps to the Van Allen belts, actually. The firmament might also be like the noosphere or the collective unconscious of the earth, which does surround the earth. The firmament is likely referring to some sort of phenomenon that's either spiritual or physical, but I do not believe that we live in a snow globe, flat earth. I'm sorry, I've looked into it a bit. I've looked into how it seems to have emanated from Tavistock, and I'm of the opinion that the earth is round and probably a toroid and may very well have entrances at the poles. I would love to see all the flat earthers get excited about hollow earth and look into that and Admiral Byrd's flight over the poles and the fact that we can't fly over the poles, and just consider if maybe you're on the right track, that what we're told about the earth isn't totally correct and that NASA is certainly lying constantly, but that maybe flat earth isn't the end conclusion that would be the best to go to. But again, I totally support your right to believe in flat earth. And I sometimes do go after flat earthers just because I've had a lot of flat earthers come after me very aggressively. Okay, so now I'm going to try and get back to where I was up above, because I will immediately answer anyone who gives me a super chat or super sticker. Wow, boy. There's no way, folks, that I'm going to be able to get through all these questions. So if you really want yours answered, then you definitely want to do a super chat or super sticker. All right. I'm just going to go through these quick. Relic One says, tinfoil shout out to White Lotus. Why? Thank you, Relic One. Yeah, I really hope to get Sam Tripoli on the show. I'd love that. I'm going back on tinfoil hat in June. Would love to have him on the show. All right, let's see here. Truther, Kali Yuga ended on 21st December 2012. We're in a transition phase. I'm 100% on this now. Yeah, I mean, it could be. Again, Bibu, Dev Mizra, going to have him on the show. I think that he nailed it. He lines up all the yugas. He does it. It lines up with the great year astrologically. It lines up with the galactic cross being at 0 degrees Capricorn on December 21st, about 300 years from now, which then would align perfectly with the beginning of the new cycle, which actually weirdly starts with the Bronze Age and then ends on the Kali Yugas. So, but I mean, a 13 years and a 26,000 year cycle, we're basically saying the same thing, really. I'm of the opinion that it's March 21st of 2025, just for what it's worth. But we can agree to disagree. What if the yugas are internal? When a person becomes enlightened, he reaches Satya Yuga. When he's extremely materialistic, he's in Kali Yuga. There's a lot of truth to that. As above, so below. And your internal state's far more important than what's going on externally in the world, because you can be super wealthy and live in a mansion and be super miserable inside, or you can live in a hovel and be super happy. I've met people who are both, actually. So, yeah. Yes, I don't leave my coins on exchanges yet. Get your crypto off the exchanges. Get it off the exchanges, folks, especially Binance. Also, Gemini, ironically, with Susie Gemini's name here. Gemini also looks a little shaky to me. Bitrex just filed for bankruptcy in the U.S., it seems they could avoid SEC harassment. I'm going to skip past some of these folks that I've answered a lot of your questions. Sorry, Ridze and Hom. Great questions. I'll just throw them up on the screen here for a second. Are beings like the Most High? Actually, I'm going to answer this one. Are beings like the Most High Moloch that are aspects of our own consciousness, or are they independent, separate entities? Both. People need to start thinking multidimensionally. That's one of the things that the Luciferian and Most High consciousness thinks multidimensionally. Molochian consciousness thinks in dualities and limited. It's either this or it's that. Luciferian and higher consciousness says it's that, and it's that, and it's that, and it's also that. And guess what? It's also that, and it's also that. I remember in college, I met this guy, and everyone was like, "Oh, that guy is like, he's got mental problems. He's schizophrenic or whatever." And I just, I didn't really think anything of it. And he made this collage, and I was looking at the collage, and I go, "Hey, that's interesting. Up here in this corner, those are all men. Oh, down here in the opposite corner, it's all women. Oh, over here, it's black people. Oh, over here, opposite that, it's white people. Wait a minute." And then he goes, "Yeah, but did you notice how these two are a blending of these two? And here in the middle, it's a blending of all four. And did you notice how this one relates to that one, relates to this one, relates to that one, and da, 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 da." And he started showing me all these relations in this collage to where it was insanely complicated. And every single picture in that collage had some kind of deeper meaning. And every single picture in that collage was some kind of reflection or inversion or blending of other principles on that same collage. That's multidimensional thinking. This guy, I then said, "Wait a minute, are you a genius?" And he said, "Yeah, I have like 175 IQ. Everyone in my family does, but we also are all diagnosed as schizophrenic." And so I'm not saying let's become ungrounded schizophrenics, right? Be grounded, but recognize that things don't have to be one thing or another. Like I often say, Moloch is a state of consciousness, and Moloch is also an independent being. Both are true. It's both a psychological state of consciousness, and it's also a spiritual vibration. It's a way of behaving, and it's a way of being. It's multidimensional. And so, yes, it's aspects of our own consciousness, and it's also reflected out in the world. As above, so below, that Hermetic principle. So we're going to keep going. Peter, hey, how's it going, buddy? Good to see you. Let's see. I'm going to just skip over some of these ones where people have asked a lot of questions. Yeah. Well, let's just say I agree to disagree on this one. Bibo Dev Mizra really nailed it. The December 21st thing is like, to me, a holdover from what's now recognized as a mathematical error on the Mayan calendar. it did mark to me, it marked the swan song of the Kali Yuga, to where like from then on things were going to ramp up and start to disintegrate, and then we'd be in a 300-year transition. But again, I'm going to have him on the show, and feel free to come on. Please do come on. I'll probably have him on the show, and then I'll have him back for a live chat for exactly questions like this, so you can go toe to toe with him. I'm pretty sure that he studied this more than you. No offense, truther, but I've never seen such phenomenal research around the yugas. That's part of the reason I realized that this guy was clearly correct. It was first an intuitive thing, but then when I went through and looked at it with the left brain, it was clear to me that he was correct. But again, that's a rounding error in a cycle of 26,000 years. 2012 versus 2025 is 13 years. It's the same thing. You're both right. Like from a math point of view, you're both right. And it's kind of quibbling. But to me, I see that things are showing signs of that we're in a yuga shift. And I, through personal gnosis and observation, the World Bank funding for the events of March 2020 ends March 31st of 2025. There's other things that point towards it. There's just lots that points to 2025. But again, it's a rounding error, and we can go into this in more detail another time. Okay. Story STC. Sorry, I have a bit of congestion here. Do you view reincarnation in a negative or positive light? Is it a matrix-like situation or more of a growth experience? Oh, it's absolutely growth. It's a beautiful thing. I think reincarnation's amazing. I think it's incredible. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think reincarnation and karma, if those were fully understood and believed by anyone, would automatically facilitate most high consciousness, because you would recognize that, it's not a big leap once you understand karma in reincarnation. I guess you do have to have the central element, which is, as Jesus said, love thy neighbor as thyself. You have to fully understand that. When you have those three elements, you're bound and determined to be in most high consciousness at that point. Because reincarnation happens precisely so you can reap prior karmas and sow future karmas. And those karmas are what helps your soul to evolve and grow. We all start out as a little, hydrogen atom that perhaps has some level of awareness, and we move our way up, and maybe eventually we become bacteria, and then we become, multicellular organism, and then we become fish, and then reptiles, and then eventually we become, like either birds or mammals, and then maybe we become human or another like highly self-aware multicellular being. And then if you evolve enough here, you are given the opportunity to become a demigod, or you can just leave the wheel of samsara, at least as far as Earth is concerned, but you can become a demigod of Earth. And then if you do enough work as a demigod of Earth, you can become a full-blown earthbound deity. And then if you do additional work, you can become a deity that isn't bound to a singular planet, and you can begin to have a consciousness that impacts multiple planets in the galaxy, and eventually you can become a galactic level god, and then you can become an intergalactic level god, and then eventually you go far enough in the evolution and you become Shiva, and your dance brings into existence and destroys entire universes, and then the cycle repeats. And it's all based on the ultimate reality, the ultimate God, which is not the Most High. The Most High is simply a harmonious aspect of the ultimate. It's the harmonious aspect of the ultimate creator that's in localized earthbound form. And so that greater being is non-dual in nature. It's good and evil and beyond either one, right? Because it contains everything. It contains everything from the Nazis to God, nothing's good anymore. Everything's been corrected. I was going to say Nobel Peace Prize winner, but back when the Nobel Peace Prize meant something, right? Before they started having warmongers be given, like Obama being given a Nobel Peace Prize for doing literally nothing, right? Except for, I guess, being black, maybe. And so, the universe clearly contains good and evil both. And the Hermetic principles say everything is has a polarity to it. And so the ultimate reality is consciousness itself. It's God consciousness. And that consciousness wanted to experience itself. And so it created reality. And then it created the veil of forgetting who and what we are. So we don't recognize that we're all one. And that created this incredible experience. There's this amazing thing by Alan Watts where he talks about a dream, that you're a dreamer and you could dream 75 years of life, and then you'd want to forget that you were all powerful, and you'd want to like have every pleasure first, and then eventually that would get boring and you'd want to do something more exciting. And look up Alan Watts' The Dream of Life, and that kind of like describes the ultimate reality in the best way possible. So I view reincarnation as extremely positive. You might not like the idea of reincarnation if you're Bill Gates, because he might not like what he reincarnates in. He's done enough evil that it is possible that someone at his level of evil and beyond, which there's people far more evil than him, they can actually become demons either through their own free will, or they can get pulled down into that. Less likely is they get kicked out of human consciousness and they become a dog or something like that. I think a lot of times when I see, like when I was in Guatemala and I was seeing like abused street dogs, a part of me wondered if those weren't like nasty human war criminals that had been kicked out of being human because they had sinned, right? Sin means missing the mark. It doesn't mean you've been naughty. It means you missed the point of existence by making that mistake. That can lead to rarely being kicked out of reincarnating as a human. That's extremely rare, apparently, just like it's extremely rare for, like, there was a cow named Lakshmi that was lived with Ramana Maharshi, the great sage of India, and that cow apparently was enlightened according to Ramana, and that's extremely rare that a non-human animal attains enlightenment. Something about the same thing that causes us to have this mind, the second dart or whatever that the Buddhists talk about, right? Like you have a bad event happen and that's the initial dart, but then your memories of it and ruminating on it, that's the second dart. Most animals don't have that second dart because they're not around humans enough. But you'll sometimes see like abused dogs that they clearly have mind the way humans do. Certain zoo animals will have mind, like the elephant that was aware of itself, which is kind of sad. I hate to burden animals with mind, but most animals just exist. They deal with what's right in front of them, and they don't think about what's happened before. When they're in nature, even if they sort of got traumatized, it's not the same. And so I view reincarnation as extremely positive because it gives us a chance to reap karmas from prior incarnations, and it gives us a chance to plant new karmas for future incarnations. And so it is always a growth experience, because when you have these negative things happen to you, it creates evolutionary pressure. Like when you're just, everything's going great, you just end up like staying in bed all day and eating bonbons and everything's great. There's no growth. It becomes very stagnant. The force of evil is what creates evolutionary pressure on us all. And our own mistakes creates evolutionary pressure on us as we have to grapple with those mistakes, both the consequences in this life and potentially in future incarnations, depending on what you do. But so as someone who tries to be ethical and moral most of the time, I welcome reincarnation. I don't have a problem with it at all. And in fact, well, I'm not going to get into that now. But yeah, that's something I plan on talking about at some point as well, because I get asked questions like that quite often. So Ron says, I think in your tinfoil hat interview, you have a chart of the most high attributes. What are the practices that connect us with the most high in that vibration? Breathing techniques, mantras, etc. Wow, what a great question, Ron. And gosh, it's this is a big question, that really deserves a really in-depth answer. And I'm not trying to be coy, and I'm also not trying to avoid your answer. It's just I only have about 10 minutes left, and this question is like one that would truly take me quite a bit of time to answer. But I think that this is a great, people have been like loading up on questions today that would make great episodes. This is something I want to go into deeper in an episode where I can really devote a lot of time to it, because this is a great, great question, and it's not super straightforward. I can say that when you recognize at the deepest level, or even at an intellectual level, right? Because there's the level of the mind, there's the level of the heart, and there's the level of the gut, and you have to kind of get all three in alignment. And for most people, the gut, certainly for me, is the hardest one to get to accept certain things. because the gut's very like primal and defends you, right? But if you can know at even an intellectual level that you should love thy neighbor as thyself, recognizing not like, oh boy, my neighbor's a jerk, but I'm going to like him anyway, but instead going, wow, that neighbor is an aspect of myself. This rock is an aspect of myself. Everything around me is an aspect of myself. And if you understand that deeply, it's going to automatically lead to behaviors of where you're going to help people that you see who need help. Sometimes helping people, giving someone money by the side of the road is destructive because you give them the money, they go spend it on heroin, they end up dying. That's bad, right? So you have to use your intuition there, because a lot of times, you know, you might be like, oh, I need to help that person, I'm going to give them some fish, when what they really need is someone to give them a barrier and a fishing pole. So you have to use discernment, but you're going to automatically do charitable acts. You're going to automatically want to protect and preserve the environment. Not stupid global warming nonsense, but, you know, like you're not going to want to see the local wetlands drained. You're not going to want to see the local old growth forest get logged. You're going to automatically want to protect that incredible manifestation of creation that is you. And so that would be my super ultra distilled nutshell answer, is to really reflect on and meditate on love thy neighbor as thyself. Because it also says to love yourself, which a lot of people forget that step. Some people are like, feel so bad about themselves, but they want to be a good person. And so they're constantly giving themselves away to others, and it just becomes draining and unhelpful. And so, you know, you really need to cultivate that self-love and then transmit that out into the world. And so this deserves a much longer answer, which I will give in the future, but that's it for now. So Ingrid S says, hello Ian, hello everyone. Hello Ingrid, great to see you. Let's see. Okay, well, I can look into that, Brett, about the no nukes thing. Again, I am needing to see more evidence of that. I want to be honest, I have not delved deeply into it. I find the timing of the emergence of this nukes aren't real thing, right as we're teetering on the brink of potential nuclear war and potential use of nuclear weapons in a limited fashion, you know, is what the angels say is all that happened. That's questionable to me. The timing of it, just like all of a sudden train theory is a thing, right, when there's this bioweapon released, you know, etc. Yeah. If you mean, are you encoding jesters and you mean Jesuits? Because, yeah, that probably has legs. They're very often invoted in things. I don't know if you say jester or joker. It makes me think you're talking about an actual order that I'm just not familiar with. So that's a very interesting comment. Oh, great. Not even question, but comment here by Shanjik. Nukes are a dimly glowing ember compared to taxpayer-funded black budget extensions of Tesla's later works. Yes. Torsion, vibrational physics. You know, some people say that's what blew apart the planet that was between Mars and Jupiter and left the asteroid belt, and that's why there's that giant scar, the Valles Marineris on the Jupiter-facing side of Mars. That is definitely, you know, some people say it's electrical universe related, but some people say it's remnants of an ancient cosmic war of something akin to humans, right? Like a spacefaring cousin, you know, Homo interstellar, I sometimes call it. So I'm going to just go through here because we're getting close to needing to wrap up, folks. Let's see, Paula Hawk, got to give Paula a shout out. Pfizer owns a patent on the home Bora Genesis hybrids created from the you-know-what. That doesn't sprite me. You should talk to your boy Sam T about this gravity doesn't exist kick he's been on. Ha ha ha. All love. He's just a kid in the candy store. Wait a minute. He's saying gravity doesn't exist? What? I haven't heard this. That's fascinating. Is he saying it in that it's actually an electromagnetic phenomenon? Because I agree with that, but gravity does exist? I don't know. That's interesting. I'm curious about that now. I'm just going to skip folks who get lots and lots of have gotten lots of questions in. Sorry, folks. I can only answer so many in a show. David M. Taylor, what's up, David? great Patreon, and gave you a shout out earlier in the show, bud. Not sure if you caught that. David is, I think he probably won't get mad at me saying this. David's bought his wife NATO and Navamsa chart reading, which is pretty cool. And so, yeah, if you want to support the show, NATO and Navamsa chart readings are pretty amazing. I always get incredible reviews. In fact, I had a CEO. Well, he's a CEO of a new corporation, and he's a CTO for a major European defense contractor. And he was blown away by my chart and actually wants me to maybe do some consulting, which I don't know if I'll be able to talk about that in the future or not. We'll see. So keep your fingers crossed that I'm able to get that. But anyways, he loved that NATO and Navamsa chart I did for him. And I really hope your wife likes the work I do for you, David. So nice to see you. Dude, tons of people have sailed all the way around Antarctica. What are you talking about? The only reason you don't believe it is because you believe in flat Earth. But I can't remember who it is off top. I've definitely known several people who've visited Antarctica and gone around it. And there's someone very recently, one of my either Australian or New Zealand fans of the channel, said they themselves went around Antarctica. And then some Facebook friend that I know and trust has sailed around Antarctica. People absolutely do. The only people who think this doesn't happen is people who are locked into the flat Earth ideology. And this is one of the reasons I get frustrated with flat earthers is they go, someone else's firsthand experience isn't real. I'm going to ignore actual physical evidence in front of me in order to contort everything into a pretzel in order to match the flat Earth theory. Things like the Southern Cross in the Southern Hemisphere, the Big Dipper in the Northern Hemisphere simply doesn't work if you're under a singular snow globe firmament. You have to have a weird Mobius strip night sky that switches, over the North Pole and blah, blah, or whatever, or switches at the equator, I guess. Like, it's just, this is why everyone can have their own belief on stuff, but I believe that flat Earth is a psyops, and they put a lot of money into it. There's a million trillion videos out there about it, but it's, to me, on the face of it, it's nonsense. It's just, it's a garbage theory. It kind of drives me bonkers because there's so much energy is spent on it. And when I see comments like this, when I actually know multiple people who've done exactly that, it's frustrating to me. It's frustrating to me. Try to reach out to people who've been to Antarctica. Find someone who can give you a firsthand account. I mean, there's experiments we can do that debunk it. Like, how much time have you spent debunking your own theory? Not much, I would bet. I bet you've spent the vast majority of your time, as is always the case with flat earthers, retrenching the flat Earth theory and disregarding evidence that disproves it, of which there's legions of evidence that are observational that one can do with just a telescope, or even just like doing shadow measurements. There's all kinds of experimental evidence you can do. That's why Eratosthenes proved this well over 2,000 years ago. And nobody believed in flat Earth. Nobody in the golden age of conspiracy theories in the 1990s, nobody believed in flat Earth. Some people believed in hollow Earth. But even in the 1990s, flat Earthers were considered particularly laughable by conspiracy theorists. And then all of a sudden, about 10 years ago or whatever, that one guy, something or other, the God, and several other rappers came out and suddenly were started talking about flat Earth. And there's suddenly all these very slick videos where they clearly had funding, and so, people have been around Antarctica because it's a continent. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. It's not some giant wall. That's just incredible to me that people believe that. But again, everyone is entitled to their own beliefs, but I'm also entitled to think that I vehemently disagree with that belief. Emmanuel Velasconci and Chan Thomas might disagree about the time frame of pole shift. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the time frames of it. And Velikovsky is awesome. That's the original electric universe theory guy, if I recall correctly. I'm not sure who Chan Thomas is. You really think we're on a spinning ball? Yes, dude, I really, really do. So let's see here. And not a ball, probably a tube torus, which is seen throughout nature repeatedly. Okay, so Are there secluded artists? Oh, wait, I just got a brand new super chat. I'll answer Hans. I'm going to do the super chat, and then I'm probably going to shut things down for a time. Sorry with my frustration about the flat Earth stuff. Again, you're welcome to believe whatever you want, but I've investigated enough to be satisfied that it's clearly a psyops, and you're entitled to believe. I've weighed both sides of the argument. I've seen which one matches my own ability to observe nature myself. Without any, I don't need someone else to explain it to me. I can visually see it myself. And all of that stuff matches that we live on some kind of spheroid tube torus planet, and that there's tons of spheres out there, and that the spheres all move around. We're not under a snow globe. That just doesn't make any sense. That requires implicitly that we're some little petri dish of like a creator or whatever. I get frustrated with flat Earth because it's so clearly not true to me. So I apologize. I don't mean to disrespect you, Brett, but I vehemently disagree with that theory. And this is why, is because this always happens. They push back on every piece of evidence, and they just say, well, that's not true. That's not real. I don't care what that person observed. That's not real. That thing that you see in the water, like where you spin oil into water and it creates a sphere, it doesn't suddenly go flat like until it settles on the top or whatever. But when something's in motion, it creates a sphere. I mean, there's tons of sites out there that debunk flat Earth with experiments you can do at home. And so just please look into the debunking of flat Earth and weigh both and ask yourself, how does it make any sense that there's a 500 plus year conspiracy at every single level of government for zero value, right? Again, COVID, why did they lie about it? Pretty obvious. Why did they lie about JFK? Obvious. Why did they lie about central banks? Obvious. Chemtrails, all conspiracy theories. There's a reason why it would be lied about that's obvious on the face of it. So are there secluded occultists or mystics that have more power than all the elites? Yes. Yes, there are. And I want to get to someone did a, dang it, it seems to have disappeared. Someone did a paid thing. Hom did. Okay. Hom said, and thank you for the donations, folks. That's awesome. Hom said, have you astral projected and have you seen reptilians or any strange beings in the astral realm? Yes, I've astral projected a couple of times. Be careful with that. Be very, very, very careful with astral projection. I have not seen reptilians, but I have met people who have seen reptilians. Usually when they took DMT is when it's happened. I guess that's not... Well, so I had a very visceral, strong experiences with reptilians in the summer of 2021, and I had some pretty crazy gnosis around that. And I think this is where I will. The Royal Order of Jesters is male. Ron Free says, "Wow, that's interesting." Gosh, people have been really killing it in the comments today. Great stuff, folks. Reptilians. So for what it's worth, and take this with a grain of salt, and you can believe whatever you want, folks. I was given gnosis last summer that reptilians have been here for a long, long time, and that some of them have been on the planet for a long, long time, much as Cynthia Schneider says. They have influenced world religions and events to a large degree. They are not monolithic. They are like us. They are ensouled beings that have free will. They are caste-driven, meaning that they have multiple different castes. There's like a warrior caste. There's like a political caste. There is a business caste, and there is a science caste, it seems. What I was given by gnosis from the spirits 2 summers ago was that this predator, parasite, much more powerful alien group had come to the Earth, and that that group was trying to mind control and harvest people on Earth. And with them came another group of reptilians that were biomechanical in nature, meaning that they were partially cyborg, that was attempting to emulate this greater, I don't know, they were like these giant blob-like creatures. I don't know how to describe them. They look kind of like melted people, almost like very thick, rounded, heavy, gigantic. I got the sense that these were very physically large creatures. This group came to the Earth and was dominating the Earth and has apparently kind of dominated Earth politics the past 20-something years in particular, and it was coming here to do some kind of very nasty harvesting of us. And following them was this reptilian cyborg group that is an offshoot of the main reptilians, and they're particularly nasty. They're much nastier than regular reptilians. And that they kind of are sort of like jackals to the lions of that other alien group. Again, this is a very intense series of visions that I recognize as very wackadoodle and out there. I'm just sharing, especially since you gave a super chat here. And what I saw was that yet another group, and I got the sense that these melted giants or whatever faction, I don't know what they're called, that they were some kind of galactic predator, like one of the most powerful technologically advanced groups in our galaxy that's quite nasty and parasitic or predatory, and that they had been attracted to come to Earth sometime in about the last 20 to 25 years, and that they had started using mind control all across the planet. And yet a fourth group appeared in the summer of 2021, and they were these gigantic brass eyes. That's what they look like. They look like eyes made of brass. They were spherical and extremely large, the size of a small moon, not as big as our moon, smaller than that, maybe a third or a quarter the size of our moon. And there were many of them, and they looked like a brass eye with maybe no eyelid. And whatever these beings were, I got the sense that they were intergalactic in nature, and that they scared the shit out of the melted giants and the cyborg reptilians and the regular reptilians, and that regular reptilians left, and I have some more gnosis about that, and cyborg reptilians mostly left. Some of them stayed, and the melted giants got out of here super, super, super quick when they saw these brass eye intergalactic species that came here. And I got the sense that this species was sort of neutral, and that it had tremendous capacity for destruction, but also wanted to observe more than anything else, that they had reached a level of technological and spiritual advancement that they mostly wanted to observe things and see how things unfolded without interfering with them as a general rule, but that they had come intentionally, it seems, to drive off these other species that were interfering with things. I also had personal gnosis with a reptilian that was in the scientific caste, and he seemed very sort of friendly, I guess. Which even he admitted was an outlier. He admitted that most of his people were neutral towards humans or actively negative towards us, that some of his people would eat us, and he thought that was wrong, the same way like some humans think that eating a cow is wrong, right? He admitted that like they had experimented on us and done all kinds of stuff, but he said that the scientific, which also had a spiritual, like there was a scientific spiritual cast. They did have a spiritual advisor cast, but those seem to be at the same level, the spiritual and then scientists, that they were arguing against being that violent, but that the political caste was extremely nasty and vile, and that the military caste was just very aggressive, and that they tended to respond to everything with violence was generally their answer, especially when dealing with other species. And that the business class was much more neutral and felt that if they could develop an economic incentive to work with humans, they would be fine with that. And he said that the reptilians will return in the not too distant future in the next few years, but that they had to leave basically because of these other beings arriving. And he was just very kind of nice and apologetic, and owning the history of the reptilians, I guess is the best way to put it. He was quite young as well. He was like, in his the human equivalent of being in his early 20s or late teens or something like that, like a grad student or something. And he told me that he wanted to observe me. And that that was, he asked my permission to be observed by him, which I actually did grant him at that time. And so anyways, yeah, pretty weird ender. Let's see if there's another. There's me. One last sticker from Ron Free. I think I got the Hom one. Okay, last one. And then I definitely need to end here. Although someone says, great question, Stormcrawl. So now I'm wondering what that question was. Okay. I'll answer that one as well. And then I'm definitely ending, but I'm answering this first. The Homo capensis question above runs the elites. Yes, this is a theory that I think has legs. These are the cone-head humans. Some other species of humans that is very mathematically and left brain advanced. The cone head bodies that are found around the world. The two explanations I've heard for that is the Homo capensis theory, and also the some people think that they might be some form of ancient artificial intelligence just because of the way they behave. I'm more open to that there's some kind of primate species that is very left brain, logical, able to do mathematics at an incredibly high level. That's interesting. There also seems to be evidence that the cone head people were like the where red-haired and blonde-haired humans come from actually are interbreeding with this group. And Freddie Silva does a lot of work on this. And I actually really want to have Freddie Silva on the channel. I actually am friends with someone who owns some Paracas elongated skulls, and I have talked to him about coming on the channel and for him to show off his collection. So, and to talk about exactly that. So that's something I plan to cover in a future episode. Man, you guys have been freaking on fire here. Okay. David Greimer Gmir also gave me a paid little shout out thing there. Let's see here. Let me see if I can see all the, I guess he just gave a donation and didn't ask questions. So thank you, David Jamir. I really appreciate that. That's so kind of you. Thank you. You gave me 2 99-cent donations. Fantastic. Really appreciate that. And then Stormcrawl, last question. Sorry, folks. I got to wrap it up at some point. Curious to know, when you're contacting spiritual entities, how do you determine whether or not they are benevolent? This is a great question. It's something that you need to be really careful with when you're working with spirits. I have had it happen to where I did have a trickster being impersonate an angel one time, but that became pretty obvious pretty quickly. It's an energetic feel more than anything else. And then the ultimate thing is like, how do I know that I've been working with the angels? Because the angels had me doing increasingly more charity, both in my personal life and externally. And they also helped me like kick my pornography addiction. They helped me to deal a lot with my anger. They helped me to heal my trauma to a huge degree. They helped me integrate my shadow to a huge degree. And I'm a much happier, more harmonious, kinder, more compassionate person. So the ultimate answer to your question, and this is a bit tricky, is you shall know them by their fruits. Now, I've had people come back and say, it's demons. You're being tricked. They're playing the ultra long game. They're just making you be charitable and kind and more harmonious and happier and nicer to people as a long-term trick. Okay, sure. I suppose that's possible, right? But, the minute that I find that the angels are asking me to do something that feels unethical or immoral, that would be when I would start to question whether there was something wrong, or if I felt something off with the energy. Their energy feels, when I'm in their presence, it just feels like very loving and very high. It feels very like high vibration, like kind of like a high-pitched frequency almost. And when I first was working with the higher order angels, sometimes that would be very intimidating, even terrifying, like the Ophanum, the whole classic, what do you call it, where it's like, fear not, I'm an angel, or what do they say? Be not afraid, human, I'm an angel, blah, blah, blah. When I first interacted with the Ophanum, which are the wheels within wheels with the eyes along the edge, it wasn't their appearance that frightened me. It was that I made the mistake of channeling them. And that damn near fried out my energetic system because I hadn't done enough work to increase my vibration. I, at that point, hadn't done enough shadow integration, healing of my trauma, charitable works, doing things like kicking the pornography addiction and other negative, lower vibrational things. I hadn't done that. So when I interacted with the Ophanum and channeled them, it was like, rah, and I couldn't help but yell out what I was saying. I barely do channeling anymore. I channel basically the virtues, and that's about it, and maybe a couple of other angels. I will sometimes channel the archangels when I need really very clear instruction that's nuanced. I will sometimes channel Raziel. Rarely I will channel Thoth, who is like one of my patrons, the Egyptian god Thoth. But I generally don't do channeling anymore. But when I channeled the Ophanum, it felt like I was being tasered. I have been tasered before. I know what that feels like. It felt almost like I was being tasered while the messages were coming through, and I was literally could not help but shout them. I recorded it, and I couldn't help but shout everything the Ophanum said. And I was doing this late at night, like 11:45. And when I got done, I couldn't get to sleep for 8-10 hours afterwards. Even though I was exhausted when I started to do this channeling, I just wanted to do it. They were around and I wanted to do it. And I was excited that the Ophanum were around and I wanted to channel them. And yeah, I couldn't sleep for like 10 hours afterwards, even though I'd been exhausted prior to that because so much energy went through me. And so to me, the ultimate answer is you shall know them by their fruits. And it just does take discernment. And I don't recommend as a general rule that you open yourself up to entities because you are right. There is a danger. And I did at least one time, I had a trickster spirit pretend to be an angel and try and get me to short circuit a part of my angelic magic ritual and go in a different direction. And I suddenly became frightened and I called upon Archangel Michael. I suddenly felt wrong. I had a feeling of something was wrong. And I called on Archangel Michael and he said it was a trickster spirit right then and there. And then I saw through it. And then the angel said, we allowed that to happen so you could start to learn discernment. And so as a general rule, don't mess with disembodied spirits. Especially do not channel extraterrestrials. That is the least, that's the most risky group to channel, except for maybe jinn, which I would also avoid at all costs. Both of those might not be intuitive, but both aliens and jinn are worse to channel than demons. Why would I say that? Because demons are earthbound spirits. They have skin in the game. They want humans to continue so they can corrupt us and trick us and get demonic pacts and feed off our spiritual energy, all that kind of stuff. They need us around. The same way wolves need caribou, right? Kind of thing. Or, whatever, mosquitoes need mammals to bite, right? They need us. Aliens don't need us. They do not need us. And they may very well want our planet or want something bad from us. And so you need to be extra careful with aliens. And jinn, yes, there's blue jinn, there are good jinn. Jinn are just like humans, they can be good or bad. But as a general rule, blue jinn, the kind of jinn that are actually kind, they just spend most of their time contemplating the universe and the mysteries and working on magic and developing themselves. The kind of jinn that are likely to interact with us are either green jinn, which are the youthful and mischievous, and if you mess with the green jinn, then their parents might come because jinn only have one child, so they're extremely protective of their offspring. And most jinn that are willing to interact with us are red jinn, and red jinn hate humans. They want to wipe us out and take the earth over again. So aliens are the worst thing to channel because they don't even have like jinn, whereas jinn might acknowledge to some degree that they're kindred spirits. Aliens are the worst thing to channel because they can be very manipulative. For example, I mentioned earlier about that reptilian. It could be that guy was hostile and trying to trick me. I didn't channel him, and I wouldn't channel an alien. But, I have that in my mind that I was dealing with a reptilian and that it could very easily be, shady or tricky or treacherous. there's enough information out there of other people who have seemed to have even incredibly positive experience with reptilians that I tend to think they're like us, that they have evil reptilians and good reptilians and everything in between. But at the end of the day, with any of these kind of entities, the proof's in the pudding. What are they asking you to do? Are they constantly having you aggrandize yourself, not make yourself more confident, and maybe you step into your power and do what you need to do in the world as an emissary of the Most High right now? But they're constantly like, you're the man, right? Narcissism, right? Not empowerment, not self-love and empowerment and stepping into your power, but narcissism, which is different, or self-hatred or harm of others, or manipulation of others, any kind of squelching the free will of others, anything that makes you feel bad about yourself. Angels won't make you feel bad about yourself. They'll call you out when you make mistakes, but they'll do so in a very firm and kind of paternalistic, but they will lift you up. Even if they say you failed, like, Ian, you failed. Like when I was struggling to be done with pornography and I had a relapse, they're like, Ian, you failed. And they didn't then, I started to go into guilt mode and they said, don't do that. Don't go into being guilty. Don't go into victimhood, because that's going to get you stuck in that lower vibration. We're letting you know you failed and you can do better. You're a good person. We love you and you can be on the path of the righteous, but we're calling you to account. You see? So that's a very tricky question that requires a lot of discernment. And that's why, even though, yes, I talk to the angels all the time. Yes, I talk to other spirits less often. Usually Thoth or the Hindu pantheon, right? Like Ganesha. But the rare times that I don't talk to the angels, I try and be very discerning, unless I'm very familiar with that spirit. And even then I try and be discerning, and I'm always on the lookout for, have I been duped? Am I making a mistake? Am I becoming more selfish? Am I in any way limiting the free will of others? Am I manipulating others? Am I doing anything other than operating in integrity? I'm constantly looking for that. And that's what you have to do. And it's risky interacting with these beings. So hopefully that answers your question. Could probably go into a lot deeper questions than, it could probably go a lot deeper on a lot of these questions, including that one. I'm just going to put this one up because that's really, really awesome. Thank you, Josh. I'm glad that this live stream blew your mind. Thank you so much. The audience has been folks, all you viewers today, fantastic questions. I'm so sorry I couldn't get to them all. There's so much good stuff. This guy Sean DePlungen never got to ask one. So I know I said last one, for real, last one. How much better do you believe living the Dwapara Yuga in the 2030s? 30% better or way better? Well, so you're shifting from 100% power of Moloch down to 75% power of Moloch, and you're shifting from 25% power of Moloch or of Lucifer to 75%. And it's really more than that. It's a more significant shift than that, but Moloch won't be able to touch the world directly anymore. Especially once they wipe out the pedos, right? Once the Luciferians wipe out the pedos, Moloch will no longer be able to directly touch the world. And so that's going to be huge. Getting rid of pedophilia, meaning there'll probably still be isolated incidents of it for some period of time, but by 2030, it'll be mostly wiped out. There won't be the giant trafficking rings. There won't be the industrialized trafficking, adrenochrome, all that stuff is going to go away. So that to me is way, way better right there. There's just going to be a lot more liberty in the Dwapara Yuga, a lot more freedom of association and freedom of beliefs. The Luciferians believe in that. They really believe in competition, and they also believe that they can make the most compelling argument. And they're going to have some very compelling arguments when they take over. So I think it'll be way better. I don't know how to really crunch it into mathematics. 30% better sounds about right. But when you're 30% better, it's 30% less bad and 30% more good. So it's more like a 60% shift. It'll be very, very, very significant change by 2030. just like vastly better. Like, again, I often describe it as, imagine the principles of the Constitutional Republic of the United States with the explosion of arts and sciences of Renaissance Florence, and with 21st tech like free energy and anti-gravity. But there will also still be, I believe, a surveillance state. They'll still, because the Luciferians built that, they're not going to give that up. There'll probably be digital ID. That just makes sense, right? Because if you go to a liquor store in the US and you want to buy a liquor, you're going to have to show a ID card. In fact, if you need to do anything that's important except for vote, you have to show an ID. So I think a digital ID is likely. We're going to see digital currencies are going to be a thing. There's still going to be probably some amount of poverty, though I think that that's going to get a lot better, just because of the rising tide lifts all boats kind of things. There might be UBI and a lot of the negatives that come with giving people welfare. So there's going to be negatives as well. There still will probably be violence among the Luciferians as they marshal for rank. What I've been told, and again, this is all gnosis, and so take it with a grain of salt. I don't sit here and pretend to be the final arbiter of truth. I'm just relaying what's been shared with me. And what's been shared with me is that the Molochians have a natural law right to commit democide and genocide on Most High people during the Kali Yugas. What's my evidence for that? How about all of the past 6,000 years of history? Whenever the Molochians run into a Most High faction, whether it's the Cathars or the Iroquois or, the people in the Hawaiian Islands or whatever, whenever they'd run into people, and you can debate about whether these people were Most High line, but they were certainly a higher level of consciousness, they wipe them out. They go right after Most High people with a ruthlessness, but they seem to not be able to recognize that Luciferians aren't also Molochians, just the same way that Most High people often can't recognize that Luciferians are not Molochians. There's that Luciferian confusion around Luciferians that confuses people quite a lot. And so the Luciferians will have a karmic right and a natural law right to commit genocide and democide and wipe out the Molochians during the switchover. I've been told, and I certainly hope all of this is correct, and again, I'm just sharing, the angels have told me that the Luciferians will be prohibited by natural law from committing genocide and democide on Most High people. That what they'll be allowed to do is corrupt Most High people, and trick them and dupe them. And if Most High people aren't competing in the marketplace, then they can starve. They can do competitive things, but they won't do like systematic genocide, which has been very common during the Kali Yugas. They'll be prevented from doing that. So all of those things together sound like a vastly better situation than the one we find ourselves in currently. And so I fervently believe that all of this is going to come to pass exactly as the angels say. I believe it's true. It feels true to me in my body. And I guess we'll see, and the proof will be in the pudding. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to wipe it up. Thanks, Ron, Josh Whitehall, Skaganet, Asta got involved in there. All the new folks, all the new viewers, all the old viewers. Thank you so much. If anyone's interested, my last call, I'm closing it tonight. I am doing an angelic magic class tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. I am definitely closing tonight at midnight, the registration. If you want to register for that, you can go to my website, which I'm going to put up right here. It's whitelotusoflight.com/consultations. And you can go there, and you can there should be at the bottom of the screen, there should be a angelic magic class, should be one of the things that you can do, and join that if you feel the call. And this is the prerequisite beginner class where I teach people basic Solomonic magic, working with the angels, which then starts them on the journey of getting more in the current of the Most High. Someone asked earlier what you can do. Working with the angels is one of the most powerful things you can do. And it starts with the Solomonic magic. And then for those students who feel the call and show the talent that the angels approve. I'm going to be teaching archangelic magic classes, and eventually the higher order angels, the principalities, which are the key to the higher realms, and then the virtues, which are the angels of prophecy and healing, the powers, which are the angels, the ass-kicking angels that fight the demons, dominions, which are the angels that determine leadership on earth, the Ophanum, which are the wheels within wheels, Ezekiel's wheel, the cherubim, the four-winged, four-faced angels of the fixed signs of the zodiac, and finally the seraphim, the six-winged angels that have eyes on their wings and are wreathed in the holy celestial fire. But those higher levels, you have to start with the basis of working with the lower tier angels first. And I am teaching my class. I teach those about 3 times a year, maybe. 2 or 3 times a year, I think it ends up being. And so this is one of those rare times where I have a class open and there's 4 spots left. So, hopefully those will fill up, but that also means that if you want one, you need to grab one right away. So, and then if you're interested in a natal or Navamsa chart, you want some guidance in that way to know what karmas are going to ripen in your life. And then finally, if you are just wanting spiritual guidance, that's something else I provide there. And all of that helps me to keep the lights on, roof over my head, and provide for my family so I can continue to do this show. So thank you so much for viewing. Please hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys soon. And thank you, Klimo, for saying great show. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.